Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Is there anybody out there? Is anybody here? Are we damn right? Katie Paige is here, researcher, podcaster, and she's one of the only people in ufology who has hair better than me. And I'm glad to have my good friend Katie on the show tonight. Dirty Filth is here with the cartoons, UFOs, Roswell, alien crashes, crash retrievals, and so much more. Where are the bodies, damn it? We're going to get into that tonight with Katie as we continue on. Let's say hello to everyone in our chat room tonight. Race fan in the gold medal position. Awesome Man B taking home the silver. Cosmic Floor with her second bronze medal in a row. Roy Boy, Nightmare, Evan Walters, good to have you all here. Magneticus and D. Cohen, thank you for coming on in. Black Dragon is here, one of our favorite veterans, the former Marine. Thank you so much for your wonderful service to all of us. We very much appreciate it. And remember, all veterans have a safe home here at Spaced Out Radio. Rui from Portugal is here. He'll be signing autographs after the show. Line up to the left of the studio. To the left of the studio. You must speak Portuguese to get an autograph. Kathy Evans, Les Paul Holland, Dark Woods, nice to have you all here. Brandon Thetford, welcome to SOR chat. I'd take some Red Baron pizza and Doritos. I'm in. And if it's cold beer, I'm there too. All right, moving on here, we have Donna Spencer. Thank you for joining us. Northern Illinois Sasquatch, nice to see you again. Charles the Huckleberry, a.k.a. Huckleberry Charles. How you doing? Dennis Zuniga, another great veteran, hanging on out with us tonight. Thank you, Dennis, for your service. We really do appreciate it. Jules is here. Jules will be signing autographs after the show. Thank you, and Jules. And don't forget to line up to the right of the studio for Jules, to the right of the studio. Smithy, thank you so much for kicking off the super chat tonight. Very much appreciate your love and support and that fantastic beard of yours. Thank you so much for doing it, man. Appreciate you. Lisa C., good to see you. As we continue on with roll call, Lioness of Gaia, thank you for coming on in. Invisible Tracker, Rhonda Montpetit, bonjour. Nice to see you. Awesome Ann Palmer, nice to have you back. Jenny, how are you tonight? Oh, there he is, from Pattaya, Sweden, starting on defense. Humbert Larson. Yes. Dutch Hank, how you doing? Obi Flett, my man, how you doing, brother? Alien Critter, good to see you. And who else is joining us here? Well, let's take a look. Diesel Girl, thank you for joining us. And, let's scroll down. There's Noble Patrick. Are you working tonight, Noble Patrick, or is it a night off? Oh, we can officially start the show. Why? Because Doug Shelby is here. The Doug Shelby has arrived. Yes, it's awesome what he does. I know he cracks up every time he hears that. Good morning, Commonwealth Andrew, Brown Dwarf, Pam Harris, Matt M. from Colorado, welcome. And there's the Gong Show, Ian McFadden. How you doing this morning across the pond? All right, let's see. Who else do we have here? Sketching Encounters, welcome to SOR Chat, all the way from Texas. Rob Aggs, welcome to SOR Chat. Very much appreciate it. And who else is here? Dolly for the second night in a row. Nice to see you here. Thank you for joining us. Jeff Steve Garvey, he'll hit a home run for you. Pixie Lara, nice to see you. And who else is joining us here? Well, let's take a look. There's Dirty Filth, Digger Dog, A Muse, and Kathleen Hughes. How are you? I think we're all caught up for right now. We know there's going to be a bunch more people coming on in, and I will make sure I say hello in the chat room to all of you as we got about 30 seconds before we're going to launch. And old Davy's going to take a little sip here. Strange Paradigms, how are you? Oh, that's Christina Gomez. I like her. She's nice. I'd like to have her dentist because she's got great teeth. Great teeth. Michael Fontaine, Dutch UFO, how you doing this morning? Good to have you here. Uncle Dale and his Power Stash are here. Quickly, if you're in Austin, Texas, and you see Uncle Dale, you rub his Power Stash for good luck right through the long weekend this weekend. Horns up, everyone. Let's rock. From the mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Stout. I am yours, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SLR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on Odyssey Radio, TalkStream Live, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. Join us at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. You can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot. Read Shirky Poo's Newswire. Check out our swag as well. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. We have a power show of UFO talk for you tonight. Joining us, Katie Paige. She'll be here momentarily to talk about Roswell right through to today and what's going on in ufology. Then in hour number 3, Swamp Dweller is here for another spooky story. Tim Senor returns for the UFO report. That'll take us right through the top of hour number 3. It'll be a great show for you tonight. Katie Paige is here tonight. She's a former member of MUFON and state director of Colorado. She is also heavy duty into UFO research, especially when it comes down to what happened at Roswell. Yeah, we're going back to 1947. Now, I know the U.S. government only thinks ufology started in 2004 with the USS Nimitz incident. No. It's researchers like Katie, Don Schmidt, Tom Whitmore, and very many others who are helping bridge the gap of the missing 50 years of what's happened in UFOs prior to today's public enhancement of the topic. And I am very glad to bring in my good friend, Katie Paige. I haven't seen her since the MUFON Symposium in Denver, Colorado, just a couple of months ago. But Katie, it's always a pleasure to have you on Spaced Out Radio. We always got great time for you. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing wonderful. Thanks for having me. It's great to see you guys again.
It is great to see you. It is very great to see you. And you know, we got to spend some time hanging out in Denver when I was there for the MUFON Symposium. And unfortunately, you weren't feeling very good. Missed my talk again. But that's okay. That's okay. You know, it's only 2 in a row, you know, but that, you know, I mean, when somebody comes up to you and says, Dave, I'm so looking forward to your speech. I cannot wait. And then you're 0 for 2, San Francisco. And then now, but that's okay. That's okay.
So where are you going to speak next time? I'll make sure I'm there.
I have no idea. I'm not lucky like some of these UFO people or paranormal people where they have their conferences planned out like 2-3 years in advance. I'm one of these guys where I literally find out a few months before, and it's like, okay, I guess I'm going. So that's what I tease you though.
I know,
you know, you are such a staunch supporter of Spaced Out Radio, and I have to say, you know, I think between Nicole Sackich and yourself. And I think you are two of the top women in the field of research when it comes to ufology. And you two are absolute leaders in everything that you do. And I think more people need to pay attention to both your great work, because it really is second to none, and it is accurate. It is right on top with the best of them that have been around, from Stanton Friedman on up. And you work hard. You really do.
Well, thank you, Dave. I really appreciate that. And, one of the greatest historians that, is David Marler. And not this last weekend, I was in Rocky Mountain National Park this last weekend, but the weekend before that, I drove down to New Mexico and actually saw Tom Whitmore down there. And we spent 2 days digging in his archives. So, yeah, I think, history and all these old reports, I think it's really important. And oftentimes people will say, well, like, why are you looking into the 70s? The 70s is sort of my favorite decade in ufology for several different reasons. But I think history is important. And I think, it was kind of appalling, at the congressional hearings when they didn't know their history, the Battle of Los Angeles, did we ever, fire upon an unidentified craft? Oh, no, we never have. I mean, come on, we need to know our history in this field. So it's really important. And it's really important the work that David Marler's doing, getting all these big, archives together. All these researchers have all this data, and then, they pass away, unfortunately. And sometimes it gets, in dumpsters and it's lost forever. So the work he's doing is just super, super important.
So for you, and quickly here, how did you get involved in this subject? What brought you to become one of the top researchers in the field?
Well, I really started in the world of, I hate to say it, but I have a ghost over my shoulder right there, kind of in the world of the paranormal, because when I was a young girl between the ages of 9 and 12, I spent time on a very high strangeness, unusual ranch out here in Colorado. We were threatened and warned never really to tell anybody about it. It's where Linda Moulton Howe got her start out here in Colorado. She was an investigative reporter, and she was investigating, the dozens and dozens of mutilations that were happening out in Elbert County and other places. Snippy the horse out here too. I was really fascinated after, I raised my children and everything. I started wondering what all that stuff was, because we experienced it all on that ranch property. And I joined MUFON in 2012, came in right as an investigator. I am still with MUFON, by the way. I'm still the state director.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
I thought things had changed.
Yeah,
Little do I
know. Yeah. I'm
Little do
hanging
I
in
know.
there. I'm hanging in there through the changes. MUFON's always changing, and I'm trying to roll with the punches. But anyway, that's a whole other topic. So I came in right as an investigator to kind of really research what was going on at that ranch when I was a young girl, that my family, my sister, my mom, and all the family members on the ranch experienced. In 2013, I bought the book Hunt for the Skinwalker by George Knapp and Colm Kelleher and started reading about our ranch. And that was the first time I ever knew anybody knew anything about the ranch. So I was like, holy cow. And then from there, I learned about Dr. Leo Sprinkle, whose birthday is today, by the way, heavenly birthday. He passed away last year. So happy birthday, dear Dr. Leo Sprinkle. For those of you who know who he is, he was a pioneer in the field for over 40 years with contactees. So today it happens to be Leo's birthday. So hey, Leo. And anyway, went to his archives and started researching the ranch. And that's really what got me started, trying to figure out, I think most of us start that way. We all have, or most of us have, unusual experiences that we've had, and we want to know what the heck it is. And so that's how it all started for me.
Well, that's awesome. It's amazing how many people start in the paranormal world, but then end up going into UFOs. I think we all at one point started on something paranormal. It's, I don't want to say paranormal is beneath, because I believe all the phenomena is all tied into one, but it's
Right.
amazing how we seem to float over from paranormal over to where we are today in the UFO realm.
Yeah, it is interesting. And, I do a little show on KGRA called MUFON What's Up. And last night we had Grant Cameron on there. And I know you guys are good friends with Grant Cameron. And we were talking about that very same thing, how, we feel a lot of this phenomenon is very much connected. And one of the great messages is, through maybe the ET message is how we're all one, and they do all these little things, these apports and these things to sort of waken us all up, whether it's Bigfoot sightings or ghost sightings or what have you. So yes, I do feel it's all connected.
Yeah, and as you've moved forward in your own research, you're one of the many who is really still focused on the past. The past being Roswell, the past being what happened in 1942 over Los Angeles, the past being what happened through the 60s and 70s and the UFO flaps of those decades right up to today. How do you stay so involved and keep all that information? You're like an encyclopedia through the decades of what's going on.
I'm really not great with names, dates, and all that. Like, that's Barry Roth. Some other people are much better than I am with that. But what I'm always looking for are commonalities. And I also find it really fascinating to look at how the phenomena changes, or cycles of the phenomenon. Like, why does it get really intense and then kind of lower and then get intense? And James Keenan and I were kind of, we had him on, and he was talking about this 11-year cycle, which has to do with the solar flares and energetic positions of the sun and whatnot. So does that have something to do with why we're ebbing and flowing with cycles? Shara Costa does great research on that as well. So I just like looking at the changes through the decade and looking through commonalities. And, when I go dig through these historic files, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for these older, obscure reports. Michael Schratt's really good at those obscure reports as well, and getting those illustrated. And I just think there's a lot to be learned by connecting these dots. And without the past, we just can't. It's like doing a dot to dot and only having 10% of the dots if you don't look at the rest of the history. So it doesn't make any sense to me not to look at it.
Well, that brings up a good question though, Katie, because you have realized since you've come into this field, say the last 15, 20 years, that there is an importance of learning the past and trying to configure it with the future. It's like Lego blocks or a puzzle, whatever you want to call it. Yet a lot of newcomers to ufology, Katie, they're only worried from 2004 on. That's their concern. The Nimitz incident is this generation's Roswell. And I'm wondering, what is the purpose? What is the point of going back 70 years to try and figure out what's happening today?
Well, because we don't have answers to that yet. I mean, if the Great Lie started in 1947, that's where we need to start unraveling that. And it's really interesting. I have behind me here, I have a whole section on the Roswell event. And I, by no stretch of the imagination, am the Roswell expert. That's Kevin Randall and Don Schmidt and others have been researching this for decades before me. But the reason I'm particularly interested in the Roswell report is years and years and years ago, decades ago, there was a rumor by a Brigadier General Arthur Exon. And it was rumored that one of the Roswell bodies ended up in a mortuary outfit in Denver. And so about 4 years ago, I had a case come across that actually came out of California. This nice couple out there. I'm going to be careful here not to give away too much, all the names and everything, but this wonderful couple out of California, her father was best friends with a mortician that worked at and she worked at the mortuary outfit in Denver as well. And there was a body that was stored in this mortuary down the street from the Denver, it was Olinger's. It's no longer there, but it was Olinger's. It was right down the street from the Mason Lodge, the main Mason Lodge in Denver, and Lowry and Fitzsimmons. So what I wanted to say about these books behind the shelf, I took this case on with a very open mind, but also I didn't want to be biased, and I wanted to follow my own leads, do my own research, go where this case took me without knowing anything about Don's work or Kevin's work or anybody else's work. And to be honest, this led me to the Eisenhower archives. I have so many documents, and all these people are fitting together. It involves Mamie Eisenhower, who is from Denver. And we can get into this more, but it's just all these dots are connecting. There's a judge involved who's a federal judge who was appointed by Nixon, and so on and so forth. And in the archives, again, another good reason for good research, you do get documents with these names that link these people together.
All right, Katie Paige is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. We're going to get into Roswell at the bottom of the hour because that's where it all begins for the majority of us who have been in this field for a little while now. And, let's look at what's happening today, though, Katie. Are you just as excited about learning about the UFO past as you, or about learning about today's ufology and what's going on, especially politically, as you are about learning more about what happened in the past?
To be real honest with you, I don't trust as much of what's happening today as I do the past. I mean, so many things could be photoshopped and faked and CGI'd, and the government. I mean, I'm not a big truster of what's going. I'm like, what is the end game? What is the narrative is trying to be controlled or steered. And so I'm kind of an untrusting person. So for me, maybe that's why I like the history, because I can trust it a little bit more. Yeah, I know, we don't know how well things were investigated or whatever, but it's something that is akin to, like, I can follow my own leads and come up with my own answers and do my own work and draw my own conclusions, where today I'm just like, it's so hard to weed through what's real and what isn't, and what are they steering, and why is it all fear-based and all that stuff. So I tend to like to stay in kind of my lane of investigating my Colorado ranch and investigating this Roswell body. And yeah, I pay attention to current events and what's happening, but to be I just like to stay in history.
Okay, so what don't you trust about today's ufology?
Well, it's like in the congressional hearings, when there's something that was said that really kind of bothered me, and that was, can you prosecute contactees or abductees for speaking their truth? And I just like wait a minute. Like, I felt like they want to take the wheel, kick us out of the car, and steer the narrative of that is what is ufology. And that concerns me a little bit, because I think contactees and experiencers should have a big voice in disclosure and being able to talk. So
It's kind of like, for me, it's kind of like, no, you guys, we don't need you down there, you lowly little researchers. We got this. We're the
Exactly.
government. We got this. You don't need
Yeah.
to worry about anything. We're going to tell you the truth. We're going to give you all the answers, even though it's all going to be private and in closed rooms. But we
Yeah.
got this. We'll tell the world what's going on. You just shut up over there. Don't worry about your
Exactly.
conferences or go back to wearing tinfoil hats. I mean, is that kind of the feeling?
Exactly right. That's how I feel. And I'm just like, wait a minute. I just want to. Yeah, no. So we could come up with our own answers. Thank you very much. We don't need you. So
Okay, but with 5
it's
minutes
just
to go,
personal truth.
before we go to break, what do you appreciate about today's ufology?
I do appreciate that it's more accepted, and that now, our servicemen and women, thank you, by the way, for everything all of you do for our country. But I'm glad that it's being destigmatized. I'm glad pilots aren't losing their jobs. If they see something, they can report it. So that's all really good. So there are, strides being made. People are trying to push the ball forward. So that's good. So it's not all, I'm not trying to be all negative or anything, but yeah. Just there's positive things being made.
I think what I like about it is the fact that we're seeing so many new faces take an
Yeah, that's
interest in
true.
ufology and really jumping on board. And they're not just jumping on board; they're jumping into the deep end with both feet. And I like that. I think it's exciting. I mean, maybe social media has made a few of them a little too opinionated, but that's okay. I think for the majority of people out there, they have jumped into this with the fact that the UFO phenomena is real. It is out there. It's happening all around us on a daily and nightly basis. And we need to know and figure out and put pressure on where we need to in order to make things happen. And I've really appreciated watching it. I hated it at first. You know, I was like, oh my God, everybody and their dog now has a podcast and it's thinning it out and thinning out the numbers for all of us who are trying to do real work. But then I thought, you know what? No, everyone's allowed a voice.
Yeah.
Everyone
And we're not seen as so crazy anymore. Like I could tell people, I tell everybody now what I do. And instead of getting that like weird look, you get like, oh, really? That's the best job in the world. I'm like, yeah, if you got paid for it, but none of us get paid for it. So it's really not the best job in the world, but it sure is an interesting job, and you meet great
What is
people.
what is the love? What is the passion that keeps you going?
Finding answers. Bottom line, finding answers. And I'm still not, I came in this field as quite skeptical. I really felt it was all us. It was all military. It was Black Access Projects. It was all NORAD and the Air Force out here. So I came in not really believing in, I believed in extraterrestrial life. I mean, the universe is too vast to not believe that, but I didn't necessarily believe they were visiting Earth and abducting people. So it took me years and years. Well, it depended on the week. I would ebb and flow and ebb and flow. Like one week I'd be like, yeah, there's something to it. And then I'd be like, no, no, no. And it's really interesting because I ran and I still do I'm the administrator for the MUFON Mars project, which is all their historical cases. And I'm not really allowed to talk to it because it's the property of MUFON, but I've got to read through 10,000 reports from when they were all on paper before they were, digitized into CMS. And yes, there's some really interesting reports, but nothing that like blew my mind and convinced me 100% that this, there's something to this phenomenon. So, it's taken me a long time to really fully come to understand that, yes, there's just way too many credible, witnesses to deny that there isn't something truly to this phenomenon.
What are we missing? We got 2 minutes. What are we missing as people in this field that you would like to say, hey, pay attention to this, pay attention on these certain dates or at these certain constellations or at certain times? What are we missing?
Well, I think the first thing we're missing is the ability to work well with each other. There's always so many, so much drama and backstabbing and, this group in this corner and that group in this corner and everybody's kind of like, and that needs to just, I don't know what that's about, but I can't stand any of that stuff because honestly, we're not going to find answers to these things unless we all really work together and listen to each other and respect one another and respect each other's work. That's number one. And look at everybody's data because that's how we're going to find answers. Everybody's going to have a little piece or little something to give to the field.
Well, and I agree with you on that as we got about a minute to go here. I think there's a lot of people who can contribute and give to the field. I think that for a long time, though, and I'm not an old guard person, even though the color of my hair says that I am. I'm still relatively new in this in 7.5 years, 8 years. But I will say this, a lot of the old guard really doesn't trust the new guard. They haven't taken the new guard under their wings to say, this is how you continue the work that we have done. Because the old guard still wants the conferences. They still want the book deals. They still want to be having their face on every documentary that's exactly the same, but with just a different title. And the new guard, I can see where they have taken offense to that, and really said, screw you, old guard. We're going to do this ourselves. We're going to use social media. We're going to use the internet, and we're going to blow the socks off of this because it's 2022 and you're still living in 1985. And that's what I see happening. But when we come back on Spaced Out Radio, Katie Paige is going to take some questions from me about Roswell. What happened in 1947? What about the crash retrieval? What about the aliens? Most important. Were the aliens here? Was it a Russian bot? Who knows? Katie will tell us on Spaced Out Radio right after this. Hi, Sage Necro. How you doing? The scowling Greg O'Brien admitting that he wears socks in the shower. Weird. Weird. Yeah, that was an awesome first half hour, Kate.
Thanks, Dave.
Awesome.
I don't
First
know why
half
my
hour.
headphones hurting my ear. My head's growing. My brain's getting bigger. My headphones are getting tight.
Happens to me all the
Katie,
time.
may I ask your 2 favorite colors, please?
Green and blue. Oh, wait, no, and purple. Green and purple. It's hard to pick just 2.
Oh, geez, I
Okay,
forgot.
thanks.
I forgot already. For those watching, I'm kind of starting a little protest here during the commercial break. There we go. What do you got there? Is that a bag of wine that you're holding on to?
This?
Oh, your alien head.
It's an alien pillow. It was in my camper.
Right.
Now he belongs up here in my office.
Hi, Pete
I
Leibel.
usually
How you
sit
doing?
on him. There. Now
I have
color.
I have a giant Marvin the Martian around here somewhere. Hold on.
Then I have this cool pillow too. Oh, this is a great one too. Look at that. And then you can get the matching coasters and all sorts of things. It's pretty fun. Oh, that's great. That's funny. Hello.
Yeah, I've had that pillow like 20 years. What most people don't know is I actually have a Marvin the Martian head.
Did you win it at a carnival?
No, I bought it.
Yeah.
I bought it.
With the big one.
Mm-hmm.
So can I read a little bit of this from the mortician? It'll be exclusive.
Yeah,
on
well,
Spaced Out Radio. It's never been shared before.
Yeah, once we get in there. River
Okay.
Dogma, how you doing, buddy? Anyone crap yourself lately? Really, Adam Lane? Okay, I may have. I'll say that. I may have. Hey, who hasn't? Somebody's got to pick it on up.
Is the reason for wearing socks in the shower so you don't slip?
No, that's just Greg. He doesn't like to bend.
Okay.
He's an anti-bendite.
I see.
Yeah. By the way, I will show off because I was asked about it whether I was wearing sandals because of my hair tonight. So I will show off the ugliest Crocs I've ever seen, and this is why I bought them.
Oh, hippy dippy.
I bought them because of that.
Tie dye.
Mm-hmm. So that's what I wear around home.
Yeah, they're comfortable. I have my
You wear
slippers
shoes in the house?
on. I have my slippers
I wear
on.
shoes in my house. I wear
You're
these.
American.
Oh, I can't really see what Filth is drawing.
No, I have wood soft stitch that I end up always getting pedicures. Yes, I like pedicures.
Oh, there I can sort of
And
see it.
hold on,
Katie
let me
traveled
make.
back to Roswell. Oh, that's cool. What does that say? Yep, it's a dead alien. I love it. Oh my goodness.
That's our dirty
Great.
right there. That's our dirty. All right. River City Kings, how you doing? From San Antonio, Texas. I hear there's great tacos and burritos down there. Let's see here. Amy Vegas. Oh, she likes a good pedicure too. What am I doing? I'm protesting.
What
I'm
are you
protesting.
protesting, Dave? What are you protesting, Dave?
No, I'm not talking about it. This is a silent protest.
All right.
All right, there.
With you, even though I don't know what for.
All right. Big thank you to Obi Flett and Smithy for the super chats. And yes, you have to, when you get a pedicure, you have to have a buff as well. You really do. Pedicures are great. If you've never had a pedicure,
I haven't.
you're missing
I've never had one. I've never had one because I don't like feet.
Okay. Hold on, Katie. Here we go. Second half hour of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We very much appreciate it. I want to remind you that if you missed most of the portions of this show or others, check out our free archives at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you, including Rocking Out to Bumblefoot, reading Shirky Poo's Newswire. Check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. Katie Paige is here of MUFON, Colorado. She never eats breakfast for dinner. She loves Roswell. She loves aliens and everything about ufology. And that's why we got her on the show tonight to break down what happened way back in 1947, better known as the Roswell incident. Katie, what is your love about Roswell?
Well, first of all, I love breakfast for dinner. It's my favorite. I wish I had some bacon and eggs right now. Well, my love for Roswell is just kind of selfish because, like I said, I got this case that came across the desk. Let me just say, it's kind of exclusive here. I may be sharing documents and sharing most of my research at the UFO Congress, which will be in Phoenix, Arizona. Let me get the dates for you so I can advertise for Karen here. It's going to be October 13th through the 16th. And it's at the beautiful Wrigleyville Sheridan, which is right next to, I'm originally from Illinois. So that's where the Cubs have their summer training, right next to the hotel. So you'll have all the Cubs logo and everything right there. But anyway, so I may be sharing this Roswell body story for the first time at UFO Congress, but you're going to hear parts of it here for the first time, really. So like I said, years ago, I got this case. And it was about this mortician that was an embalmer here in Denver. And there was a body that, well, it wasn't a body. It's actually just a vault that sat in the basement of a mortuary for decades. And Lou, his name was Lou. He since passed away, but he didn't think there was a body in this vault. He, finally one day he inquired, like, what the heck is this vault been sitting in the corner where we store our chairs for all these decades? And the owner of the mortuary, whom, by the way, was a 33-degree Mason and went to the same lodge and lived 3 doors down from Mamie Eisenhower, connections. There's a lot of these connections, said, oh, don't worry about that. There's a judge that has a hold on this body and it can't be touched. Okay. So there it sat and it sat and it sat and sat. Finally, curiosity, got the best of him and he pulled his caper. He's a lovely man. Him and his wife live in New Mexico. So went down there 3 different times to interview him, once with the film crew, and I'm really glad we did because we have his testimony now since he's no longer with us. But he wrote this little pamphlet, this little booklet, and it's behind glass at the Roswell Museum, and you really can't get your hands on it. In fact, it took us a while to get there, but he wrote this little thing called They Were Here by Lou. And he pulled his little caper in the evening and opened up the vault. And he was shocked to see that there was a child-sized coffin in there. Opens it up. There were several layers of formaldehyde cloth. His eyes were watering. The smell was intense. Peels back the layers of formaldehyde cloth. And he was mortified to see this body. And he said all the visceral was removed. So all the organs, the genitals were completely cut out. Orifices actually, I can read to you when he does this. Can I read just a little bit part of this? Because I've never shared this publicly before. But he says, let's see. Let me see where I want to start. He He said, my heart was pounding as I raised the top of the little coffin, and it began to pound even harder as I gazed therein. The coffin's interior had been completely gutted. What had probably once been a delicate velvet or satin lining to create the feeling of comfort and more warmth was now stripped and bare, cold, and forlorn looking. As it was a forlorn looking metal container devoid affection or compassion of any sort was all that was left. This was the image that left me in total awe. The odor of the formaldehyde instantly began to dissipate, causing my eyes to tear, my nose to discharge mucus, and my lungs to feel a burning sensation. I knew I could tolerate this caustic atmosphere for just a few minutes before needing a breath of fresh air. So then he goes back. He goes, as I lay back the soap covering, I found another and another until I had moved 5 or 6 layers of wet cloth to each side of the body. With the last layer yet to move, I could see that the body had been laid on these several layers of formaldehyde saturated cloth were large enough to wrap around it. And then he goes on to say, as I moved the final layer of wrap to each side, I was overwhelmed by my first impression of what I saw. Taking a step backward, I felt I had entered, indeed violated, another realm of life, a state I'd never experienced. This was my gut reaction. Standing there in a state of awe, I must have been a vision difficult to comprehend. Teary eyes, runny nose, labored breathing, and mouth agape, all because of why which now would ultimately give birth to countless otherwise. So let me get to where he's describing. Okay, so he said this little being was so different, even though it was deformed. Beyond that, it was still different. I would judge that the little being was about 4 feet in length, perhaps just a little bit less, as the coffin was 4'6" unit. There was a little bit of clearing at the head and the feet of the coffin. Perhaps the most striking feature about my initial impression of this little one was the disproportionate size of the head and body, which showed no sign of hair growth anywhere. Its head was abnormally large, but not unlike that of a hydrocephalic child. So the very first question I asked him was, if you thought it was an alien body, why didn't you take photographs? Okay. And he wasn't into UFOs or aliens or anything like that. Yeah. And he said, really, his first impression was, first, he was mortified that it was a child at all. And he felt like he, disrupted this piece. And second, he thought it could have been a severely hydrocephalic child. Okay. So that was kind of his first impression. And then he said, his head was abnormally large, but not like of that of a hydrocephalic child. But that is where the similarities to the disease ended. The size of the cranium was visually accentuated even further by the complete absence of external ears. Only the auditory canal was visible and was no more than a 1/4 inch deep, not much more than a dimple. So dimples for ears. Let's see. The eyes were very striking, as they were wide open and appeared to have no eyelids as such, save for sight cause above each eye. All the visceral was removed. Genitals were cut out. The eyes were relatively large, oval-shaped, and deeply set in the protruding brow, which somehow gave them an inquisitive look. A full autopsy had been performed, yet to my surprise, neither eye had been immaculated nor dissected in any way. So the eyes were there, but the organs were not. And then it just goes on and on and on. So this is kind of what started the investigation. But then what I ended up doing was, I was like, okay, I started investigating who owned the mortuary, why was the body there, and who was this judge who had this hold on this body. And it turns out that the judge was appointed by Nixon, okay? And he was the crash retrieval specialist and the infectious disease specialist. In fact, he handled, it was a big case. He handled organ transplant case. And also, do you remember the toxic shock syndrome case across the United States? It was a big, huge deal. He handled that as well. And so this judge was very interesting. And the fact that he had this hold on this body was very fascinating. So I started researching the judge. And what's really crazy is my mom at the time was living at an independent like retirement home, and she had asked me to give a presentation on UFOs 101. And, this judge has long since passed away. He too was a 33-degree Mason, by the way, this federal judge. And so I was at this home giving a presentation at my mom's place, and I was talking to the folks after my presentation, and I was talking about this Roswell Denver body connection. And I was talking about the judge, and they're like, "Oh, well, Sherm, his widow's on the 5th floor. You want me to go get her?"
Coincidence?
Coincidence. So I had 2 interviews with the judge's widow. And she tells me, if I speak about this at UFO Congress, I'm going to play some of the audio clips from my interview with the judge's wife, because she was telling me about all the lavish parties she had with, the Eisenhowers and the top generals at Fitzsimmons and Lowry, and and how he was the infectious disease specialist, the crash retrieval specialist, and how he was in and out of New Mexico and Roswell several times. This federal judge was. And more importantly, as I'm following all these leads, I ultimately kind of know, I think I know where the body ended up. So I think I know where the body is buried. And interestingly enough, she and her husband, the judge, were at a particular removal of one body when they put this other body in. And I'm like, why were you even there? Like, they shouldn't even have been there. And I have documents at the Eisenhower Library that talk about this transfer of these bodies. So it's really an intense, one thing has led to another, and all these connections match. And so when Don Schmidt came to talk with me in Denver, I asked him, if there was a Mason connection and how one of the bodies ended up in Denver. Like, how did that happen? And he explained to me that 3 of the bodies went over to Dallas, Texas. And one of those that went to Texas might have gone to Denver. And my theory is, and I'm not saying this is factual, but my theory is maybe if there was something in the little Roswell body, an organ or something they didn't understand, or they needed a specialist to look at, Fitzsimmons Hospital at the time was one of the best, Army hospitals in the country. And we know that there were military men from Lowry Air Force or Lowry Army Base at the time. It turned into Air Force right after that, at the Roswell crash site. So it makes sense that they would possibly take one of the Roswell bodies to Denver to Fitzsimmons to be autopsied. And one of the things he told me I needed to really look into was to see if Fitzsimmons had refrigeration at the time, because that would make a difference. Although it sounds like these little bodies were put in formaldehyde. So,
well, the thing that confuses me is I had always thought that the crash retrieval, as well as the bodies, were taken to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio. So to find out that bodies potentially did not go there, but went to Denver and Dallas,
right.
That's a little shocking
Some went to
me.
Dallas. Yeah, some went to Dallas. One, I think, went to Denver, and the rest went to Wright-Pat. And that I verified with Don Schmidt. Yeah.
How many bodies were there?
I thought there were 7. Does that sound right? I'm just focused on the one that went to Denver, but I think there were 7. Is anybody in chat? I think that's right. So
Okay.
that was my thing too. And even before I knew that some of them went to Texas, I thought, well, it would make sense. It's kind of the old adage, why would you put all your eggs in one basket? Why would you take all the bodies to one place, especially if you had specialists elsewhere that maybe could have looked at them or whatever? And then I get the question, well, why would they have hidden this body in a mortuary for decades? Why wouldn't they have kept it at the Army base or the whatever? But when I started looking into who owned the mortuary and the Mason connection and the judge and the Eisenhowers, it kind of made sense that they would, it's like hiding a book in a library kind of deal. You know what I mean? So
it's very interesting indeed. Very interesting. So the fact that this one body ended up in Denver and has been buried in a cemetery, in a grave that's been, I believe, remarked, correct?
Well, it's
Has it
not
been
marked at all. No,
marked at all?
I don't want to give away where the body is because I won't want everybody heading there. But no, the marker that was there has been removed. And what's really interesting, so for 3 years now, every spring and summer, I go to this location. And what's fascinating to me is everywhere in the cemetery is super green and lush, except for right where I believe that little body is. Now, I don't know why the grass is dead there and nothing is growing there, but I went and I did this is before I knew you had to core down into the ground to get soil samples. So I need to go do soil samples. I would love to be able to get like ground penetrating radar in there to see if there's indeed something under this plot where there's not supposed to be anything there anymore. And the other thing where this body is sitting now, the person who used to be there, if you go to the front office and ask for this particular person, they'll type in their little computer and they'll go, oh yeah, here's the map. And they'll give you the map. I've done this twice and I have the maps to prove, they still tell me this person that is no longer there is there when I know they're not there. And so it's really all highly suspicious. And the other body that was there was removed, at night. And then this federal judge was there. It's all highly, highly suspicious. And so I really do think there's something to it. Yeah. The more I looked into it, I started out the case going, maybe there's nothing to this, but all these people are connecting and everything's kind of making sense. So I really think there's something to this.
Katie Paige is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio, talking about Roswell and the events in 1947. Katie, as far as I knew, there, and Stanton Friedman believed this as well, there were 2 crashes on that day. There was the one at Corona, which was the Roswell crash, and then the one at San Augustine, which they believe, at least Stanton believed, that the 2 crashed or collided in midair. One went down in San Augustine and another went down in Corona. How come we never hear about Corona?
Yeah, that's a good question. And Doug Wilson, our old state director for Colorado, he had a great presentation of all sorts of crashes that happened in 1947, across the country, but several in New Mexico. I mean, there's Aztec, and not sure if it was in 47. I'm pretty sure it was, but we do have other big crashes. And I think there were like 12 bodies at the supposed Aztec crash and other locations. So my thought was, well, maybe one of these bodies is from another one of those crashes with supposed bodies. But the reason I really focus it on the Roswell crash is because of the very first clue from that Brigadier General Arthur Exon, who specifically said one of the Roswell bodies went to a mortuary outfit in Denver. That's where it all started. So that's why I tie this particular body to the Roswell event. And I don't know why we don't hear, much about the other crashes in New Mexico and across the country in 1947. There were quite a few. And like I said, I'm not the one that has all these dates and locations in my head like some other historians.
No.
Yeah.
Well, let me put it this way then. With the crash at Roswell and the bodies that were dispersed, the one obviously ending up in Denver, have you talked to anybody at the cemetery, or anybody who may have been part of ceremonial services around that time to see if they actually know if that's a child or if that's something else?
Well, yeah. So I have to be really careful about this because, how can I say this without giving away everything? This is a pretty high profile person. So a lot is known about it. So I was able to go to archives and pull data and, transfer papers and how this was looked at as the project and things like that. And I have the manifesto list of this. But I could just tell you this, it's in a place that nobody would ever get to. So in my opinion, if there's an Eisenhower connection to this, and if there's truth to the story, there's that old story that Eisenhower, he was supposed to go to the dentist, but he actually met with aliens, right?
Yes.
So if so if there's any truth to that story, which I believe that there is, I would feel like the Eisenhowers might have some sort of emotional connection to the aliens, or maybe feels some sort of compassion towards them for some reason. I don't know why, but I just know that where this little body is would be a really safe place to put it. That's, nobody's ever going to get to it.
Can you describe the area? You mentioned that the grass all around it seems to be, it looks like it just refuses to grow, maybe burnt. Explain the area. Are there trees around? Are there other grave markers around?
It's your typical cemetery. I mean, the cemetery is very lush and green and well kept, except where I suspect this little body was moved to. And right there, it's all dead and nothing really grows, and it's just really bizarre. So, I don't know what that's about or why that would be if something's leaking, because you got to remember, when you bury something, you have a cement. It's like a casket within a casket within a vault. I mean, it's like a box in a box in a box, right? So it would have to be pretty potent to be killing, the vegetation on top, whatever. So I should go out there with Geiger counters and some other things, see if anything's different around there. I haven't done that yet. Maybe I should do that before winter, but yeah. So it's very unusual.
Mm-hmm. Is it a pristine area? Like you mentioned, like lush trees, they always try and make it look like a beautiful park to stroll in, even though it's filled with the dead, I mean,
yeah, it is very much so. It's a very well kept cemetery. Yes.
Do other people have you talked to other people in that area who have noticed the same browning around this as well? Or you try and keep it very...
I'm keeping it low key. And like I said, this is really the first time I'm talking about this in public. As a matter of fact, when I go and ask any questions, whether I go to I've gone to the probate office, for example, because I'm thinking, okay, I know the judge who held the body for all these years. And so if you hold something in the courts, there has to be records and documents. So I go to the probate office to figure out, if you're holding a body, there's going to be records. The problem with that is, so every time I search it, it's $5. So you need either a file number or a name. And I'm like, I don't have a file number, and I don't know what they would have named the little alien body. So I'm coming up with all these crazy names. I've spent like $65, making up, like, it could have been this name or that name, or I finally gave up. Like, you're not going to come up with a name. So then I started researching and going through the judge's archives, because in Denver, you can, go through all the judge's archives, and I pulled all his 33-degree Mason, documents, and he actually is in the same cemetery as this where I think the body is, which is also interesting. And so I'm learning more and more and more about the judge, hoping to come across something that will link him to this body. And then when I met his widow, and she tells me, that they were actually there at the removal of the one that I'm suspecting, my mind was blown away. Like, wait, what did you just say? You were actually there when there's only 6 people there, but you and the judge, you were there. Like, it makes no sense that they would have been there unless what I'm suspecting is true, that they removed one body to put in the other. I really think that's what happened.
Katie, we got about 30 seconds left. And when we come back, we're going to continue with Roswell talk and the importance of still solving this mystery 70 plus years later. And why is it still relevant to today? That's what we're going to get into next. We're also going to take some audience questions. Read hour number 2. So it's going to be an exciting, fast-packed hour with Katie Paige, MUFON State Director for Colorado, researcher extraordinaire of Roswell and many other UFO instances and incidents. Wow. Fast hour on Spaced Out Radio. You'll have to hit the archive for that one. We continue with Katie Paige as our guest. My name is Dave Scott. We'll be back with hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio next. All right, Dirty. Take us away, big guy.
Oh, I can't wait to see that. Need my
Katie, I'll be right
glasses.
back, okay?
Okay. That's awesome. All my favorite colors. I'll be right back too. Hold on. I'm going to run downstairs, get a snack. I can finally see the messages in the comments. I wasn't able to see them before. Hi, Jessica. Let's go through them here. Hi, Kara. Hi. I have such slow internet up here. I moved up into the Rocky Mountains. So I am out here with really slow internet. It's like 15. I can't download anything. It's really frustrating. I can't wait to get Starlink. I don't know if you guys can hear me or not, actually.
Oh, we can hear you.
Okay. I'm like, I
Space-
don't know if I'm just talking.
You talk away. Dirty Filth
just-
has his mic
I'm
on
just
mute for
talking.
some reason. Hi, Kira. How are you? The amazing Kira.
I've been sitting here rambling the whole time. This is terrible.
I have 2 French doors up here right in front of me, and I have one open. And I told David before the show, if a mountain lion jumps in here or a bear, it's going to be a funny show because I'm going to go screaming. I'm a little freaked out because the stars are beautiful out here tonight, though. It's really clear, little thin
Nice.
moon, so you can see the Milky Way out here. I'm on just about 2 acres. In the back of the house, you really can't see any houses. There's no light pollution. So it's just really, really pretty out here. But it does kind of freak me out because of the mountain
You know,
lions.
it's-
I like to, lay up there in the trees. So I'm afraid one's going to jump in my house.
You know what's weird is, you look at the Milky Way right over top of your house. It's right over top of mine too. I mean,
Yeah,
it
that's
just makes you
cool,
think
right.
how big it really is, even though it
Right.
looks small. Let's say a quick hello to Sweet Tony D, and who else is joining us here? 416 Bitcoin, Robert Lamoth, thanks for coming on in, and Angela G. And we're about to start hour number 2, so let's get this going. Hi, Mama Susan.
Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. Thank you so much for joining us. Good to have you here for the UFO talk. My name is Dave Scott. I'm the guy at SOR headquarters who's hanging on out with all of you. And I want to say hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America and digitally on Odyssey Radio, TalkStream Live, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. Join us at youtube.com/spaced out radio. Do old Davey the favor. Hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. And what do you got for us tonight, Clam? Zamoka. Zamoka is your password. Use it wisely, space travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read Shirky Poo's Newswire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. Here we go, hour number 2 of the show with researcher and podcaster Katie Paige. She is the state director for MUFON in the beautiful state of Colorado, which, of course, I got to speak in Denver at the MUFON event just a couple of months ago, and what a pleasure that was. And Katie, I'm not going to lie, I had a big crowd there. I did.
I know you did. I got a lot of great feedback from your talk. I'm like, who's your favorite? Oh, Dave Scott. So you were a big hit, Dave.
I was. I think it was the hair. I think it was the hair.
Yes. And your energy. You have great energy, and you have a great voice for presentations and for radio. So
Thanks for radio, my hun. Face for radio. That's where we're leaving it right there. We've been talking a lot about Roswell in hour number 1, and I want to continue with that here for just a little bit before we get to some audience questions a little bit later on in the show. But Roswell, really, for the majority of us in ufology, is the start date, so to speak, for today's
start of the cover-up.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's explain that for our audience who may not understand. What do you mean start of the cover-up?
I mean, we have, I think UFOs and UFO sightings go back to antiquity. I mean, cave paintings on walls and things like that, and art and everything else. But, the Roswell crash, they had the big headline news that, a UFO had crashed in New Mexico, and then they redacted it, so, and then, I think there's been, they were crash dummies, and even before we had them, and one lie after another. And I think all their lies are being exposed. And, I think I know there are some really good ufologists out there that don't believe that Roswell was a true event. I, however, tend to lean that it was, just because of the research that I'm doing and everything. All these dots are connecting for me. And the reason it's such a big deal for me, Dave, is because if I were to be able to prove that there was a Roswell body, and I mean, hello, that's really big news. Like, yes, we know where one of the bodies is. So there's proof. Um, so, and I do think that is possible. I do think even after all these years, answers still can be found. And that's why I think history is so important, because just like Project Blue Book, Project Blue Book, they were really focused on nuts and bolts craft. I mean, the focus has been different for different investigators and researchers through the decades. And as we learn more and we grow, we can go back and re-examine some of these old historic cases and ask new, fresh questions if the witnesses are still alive. Just like with the Colorado case, you can go back, the hitchhiker phenomenon, for example, where we're kind of making these connections with these different colored orbs, blue orbs, orange orbs, shadow figures, and whatnot. They weren't asking people that were having UFO sightings if they had this hitchhiker phenomenon, if they affected them, in a conscious or awakening kind of way, just like Kathleen Martin's going back, or no, not Kathleen Martin, I'm sorry. Lynn Kitai, Dr. Lynn Kitai with the Phoenix Lights has noticed that most of the people who witnessed the Phoenix Lights in Arizona have had this great spiritual awakening in their lives. And she's doing a study on that for the people who witnessed the Phoenix Lights. So we can go back to these historic cases and ask new, fresh questions.
Okay, and that's wonderful and great. However, with the cover up that's happened over the last 70 years, and the fact that each and every year people are dying off from that era, I mean, there's not many left that actually remember, unless they were, extremely young children at that time.
Right.
How hard is it to find evidence towards what is going on outside of what we've already been told?
Well, for me, it's going to archives and looking at, I mean, I have a kind of a niche where I'm looking at just one little piece of that whole story. So for me, and I have key players and their names. So like I said, I can go to the federal judge's archives and connect people in places. And then of course they have their, maybe their widows or aunts or uncles or children that you can go interview. So for me, it's really doing the digging. I mean, you have to spend 2, 3, 4 days, several times digging through archives and compiling lists. Like for me, going back to Fitzsimmons and Lowry, for certain years, I'm pulling names of generals and making, going through people finders and seeing if they're still alive. And if they're not still alive, are their children still alive? And can you connect all these dots? So it is a lot of work. It's a lot of digging and pulling files. And thankfully, a lot of these places you can do the preliminary investigating online, what boxes to pull, what files to pull, but then you actually physically need to drive to these locations, have them pull the boxes, and then go file to file, page by page by page by page. And I would take pictures of the documents and I really examine them when I get back. So it's been like years and years of hard work just to connect dots,
Okay, so the idea that you are pushing as much as you can to try and, talk to anybody, are people today, those newer generations where they may have heard stories from grandpa and grandma or great grandpa and grandpa or grandma or whatever it may be, are they willing to talk? Are they willing to give up that information?
Yeah, it reminds me of a crazy story I had. I was at this really cool celebration for this great radio podcast called Spaced Out Radio in Las Vegas. And there was, it's called Fremont Street. And there was a guy there dressed up as one of the Kiss characters, the big star on his eye. And,
Yes.
And one of your listeners or somebody, I can't remember who it was exactly, started talking to him about why we were there. And he had a Roswell connection in his family. And so we went out on the street, and there I am talking to Mr. Star of Kiss about Roswell, of all things. So you never know. Like, that's something that I think happens a lot, especially with, I don't know what it is, but these synchronicities and coincidences aren't just coincidences. Like, what are the chances of being in Las Vegas on Fremont Street? And we just happened to mention Roswell and this, and I still have his contact information. So yes, people are willing to talk, and you would be surprised, when you will run into somebody who has this, interesting connection to, not only Roswell, but other historical, UFO events. So I was like, what? The guy from Kiss, he has a family member. Yeah. So that's kind of funny.
Well, you know what? I mean, everybody loves to talk about it. It's more folklore now than it is truth for a lot of people. So how do you gauge the real information rather than the folklore that is now surrounding the event?
Well, you have to verify it. So, just because somebody on Fremont Street is dressed up as Kiss, I'm not going to take his word for it. You need names. You need to go verify these people are who they say they are. They lived where they said they lived at the time they said they did. You have to do the work to verify these stories, just like with any case that we get, within MUFON. One of the first things we do is verify the witness to make sure it's not a hoax or, something. So yeah, you just don't take everything at face value. You have to take the story, listen with an open mind, and then go do your homework to verify things, and then make those connections on your own, but it's so important to,
what do most people miss about Roswell? We all think of the crash. We all think of the bodies. What do most people miss?
Well, I think it's the old game, like where you put a ball under the shells and you mix them, and you're supposed to watch the ball. Which shell is the ball under? I think that happened with Roswell. I think that happened. I think that happens a lot in ufology in general, where we're led one way, but people don't tend to look in other directions and look for new bits of information. We just sort of all like follow this, like, this is the way so and so said it is. So if so and so said it, then this guy's gonna follow suit and follow suit and follow suit. And I think in general, we all should not just be gullible and believe everything every researcher says. We need to go do the work ourselves. And I think that's super important, not to just always follow suit. And yes, there are so many good researchers, but you have to do the research yourself, and verify for yourself and follow where it goes. Otherwise, it's sort of like a news story that just gets repeated over and over and over. And again, that happens all the time on the news now. It's like parroting, right? And I think that happens with Roswell and a lot of historic cases. And again, why, what David Marler is doing is so important, because it gives us the opportunity to go do the work ourselves and go back and re-examine and look at things with fresh eyes. And that's why these young new people coming up, I would encourage them to go and do some, find a niche. Because for me, for example, that's one thing that happened just the other weekend. I found myself, there's so much information there. I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to investigate this piece and that piece and this thing and that thing. Well, you can't do that because it's just too much. It's too overwhelming. So you should have a little niche that you focus on, whether it's orange orbs or whatever the little niche is, radar sightings, police sightings, underwater sightings, whatever it is, and really focus in on that one thing. Because if you don't, you'll just get lost, and it's overwhelming, the amount of data that's out there.
Okay, so the amount of data that is out there, you've mentioned about David Marler, you mentioned Donald Schmidt, and many others who have been investigating this story for a long time. What is holding back the research? Is it the government because they don't want to give up the story of what happened?
Well, I'm sure the government somewhere, and when I say the government, I don't even know which part of the government. I mean, here's another weird synchronicity. Like, so the government contracts out a lot of work, and the reason they do this is because they can't be FOIA'd. Okay, so again, I was in Canyon City doing a presentation just on UFOs, just general news, and I like to be early everywhere I go. I'm like an early bird, so I was like 2 hours early just to see where I was going to be speaking. And there was an editor of this newspaper next to where I was speaking, and the guy was really friendly, and he's like, "So why are you here?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm here to talk about this subject." And he goes, "Oh, you're kidding me." I ended up talking to this gentleman for 2 hours. He was a really high up in the General Electric, okay, and worked on engineering craft. He was an engineer for General Electric, and he was telling me about Nancy Pelosi's laptop and what was really on it, and how China is trying to acquire General Electric because of all their back engineered data, and how we're 30 to 40 years ahead of what we think we are in technology, and on and on and on and on. I'm just like, my jaw is dropping to the floor. Again, have to verify that this person is who he says he is, but he seemed pretty darn credible to me. But it's amazing some of the people you run into on this topic.
All right. The idea that we believe there is a cover-up, which you stated right off the top of this hour, how far back does this go? Does it go right to do you think there is like giant files maybe stored at the Pentagon or something along those lines?
No, that was to my point with the General Electric, the closet full of secret data that nobody can get to. Because he was telling me about this kind of no bigger than a closet. You can't go in there with a pencil. Everything you learn as an engineer in there, you have to have it memorized in your head. I think these things, very few know. I think everything's compartmentalized. I don't think that there's just like one person or a book of secrets. I think there was a television show called The Book of Secrets. I don't think that exists. So I think it's scattered now. I think it's sort of messier than we want to believe it is. But I do think there are people that know more than others, for example, for sure. And I do think secrets are still being kept. And I think there's a narrative still being rolled out. And I'm not sure what that is. And it kind of makes me uncomfortable.
Okay, so if you think there is a narrative that is out there, what would that narrative be? What would be the purpose of that narrative?
Fear, power, and control.
Okay, by who?
Well, by powers that be, that want to I don't know. I don't want to get all conspiracy theory on everybody.
No, I
just like, I'm just not really trusting that everything they know isn't going to be manipulated and turned for nefarious purposes or for profit or for whatever. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying that all ET contact and that is good. For a lot of people, it has been fearful. It has been scary. And I'm one of those people. Like when I was a young girl, what I went through on the ranch was pretty terrifying. But I'm also one that believes like, I think they haven't hurt us yet, so I'm kind of in that school of thought. Like if they wanted to destroy us, they would have done that a long time ago. I don't know what they're waiting for. I don't know why they're not showing themselves. And I don't know why, if they want to harm us, why they haven't already. So.
Well, that's kind of the big thing. I mean, do you then believe that there is something more to this? Because the next set of events, if you go down the calendar, okay, I mean, if you started at 1942, kind of the prequel, that would be the LA incident.
Battle of LA, yeah.
Battle of LA. So for people who don't understand the Battle of LA, that was an incident in 1942 where there seemed to be some sort of craft over top of LA, and LA was highly defended at that point because it's World War II. They aren't sure if the Japanese are coming in to invade. And there is this one weird photograph that is out there that shows this weird thing in the sky that all the machine guns and anti-aircraft guns are pointed at. And then you go to Kenneth Arnold in Washington State in earlier 1947, where that's where the term flying saucer came from.
Yeah.
And there's still a lot of controversy, and there's still a lot of controversy around that.
And the Foo Fighters. I mean, to me, this all started, during wartime. And then even talking to Grant Cameron last night, all these events, we were talking about a Canadian event, which I just found at Marlar's. And interestingly enough, another synchronicity, it was a 32-page document. And I liked it because in Elbert County, when I was there as a young girl, there were 2 interceptors that were supposedly in pursuit of a UFO over the ranch. And these 2 interceptors crashed, and I FOIA'd and I got the information on that crash. And so at Marlar's, I find this interesting article that NORAD and the Air Force had admitted scrambling 2 jets in Canada in 1975, around the same time as the ranch. And I'm like, oh my gosh, and then the Canadian military, they were saying that it was protocol for them, if they had a radar incident or an incident, they would actually file a report, which supposedly in 1975, they were, the United States, NORAD was out of the UFO business as of 1969 when Project Blue Book ended and MUFON kind of took over, but they said they had protocol to send those reports to Colorado Springs and NORAD, which is really interesting. So I was really interested in that because of the ranch. And so I was talking about that on the show. And in this 32-page document I found at Marlar's, they mentioned that Grant Cameron was one of the investigators on this other incident that happened that same year, that same fall. And they talked about this big ice cream cone shaped craft that was seen in Canada in 1975, the same time that there was a big ice cream cone shaped craft over the ranch in Elbert County. And so I'm like, what is going on? And he said, with the cattle mutilations, that these were all around nuclear facilities and missile silos. And interesting, in Elbert County, we had the missile silos. We had, NORAD, Air Force Academy, and we had Francis Warren in Cheyenne, Wyoming, had really incredible sightings by multiple military people, generals, sergeants, all sorts of people in Francis Warren of several craft over there. So I really do believe this, again, why history is so important. I believe all this started around wartime. These ETs are going, what? They don't like us having nuclear weapons. They're like, what are these morons doing on planet Earth? I really believe that that's the case. They're killing each other. Why? So, and a lot of, the reports really back that up. And Grant Cameron was saying, like, you can almost see where all these mutilations were around these, missile silos and missile testing and all that stuff. So, was it the military getting the cattle, testing the cattle for whatever chemicals that they're spilling on the land? Probably a good vast majority of them were that, but not all of them, because there's some really high strangeness incidents of mutilations as well that wouldn't fall into that. So I do think the vast majority of the mutilations were the military, but some of them don't fit that.
Okay, the idea here about Eisenhower and the alleged Eisenhower story where he said he had an emergency dentist appointment in LA when he was visiting a charity event in Palm Springs, but allegedly he flew, I believe, to Holloman Air Force Base and met up with a couple different alien species. With 40 seconds to go, do you believe that event happened? And if so, why?
Well, I do, because of my Denver body research, because of the Eisenhower Mamie connection to this little body. So I do believe that happened, but I'm only basing it off of that. So, yeah.
That's good enough. Katie Paige is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. We have her until the top of the hour, where we're going to continue on talking UFOs, what's happening today, what's happening around the world. Does she like it? Does she not? And we are going to continue on here with this incredible conversation. She is the MUFON State Director for the beautiful state of Colorado. We love Katie around here. She's got better hair than me. which sucks, but that's okay. Spaced Out Radio continues with the second half of the show right after this.
You have good hair too, Dave.
Not as good as yours. Hold on. Let me set my protest camera up. There we go. There we go. All right. Thank you, Chris Holm, for that great super chat. Enzo, hope your hair is looking good, my friend. And let's see who else has showed up here. Steam Train Mark, thank you for letting me know I am alive tomorrow in the future. I appreciate that. Thank you. Chris Teen, how are you? For some reason, she has a space in her name, but I never know how long I'm supposed to pause in between that.
Chris, awesome. I think I got to hang out with a lot of these people in Vegas, so that was a lot of fun. Hopefully everybody will go next year too. Are you going to have it in the same place, or are you looking at some place?
Bo Hunter, good to see you. Oh, it's either going to be back at the Golden Nugget, or it might be at the Tuscany. We're pricing things out.
Nice.
Yeah. Dirty Filth is going to be there.
Yes.
Well, I hope so, because I want to get this piece of artwork from. I'm going to frame that one. That's awesome. So
well, let's see what
it'll come with the frame.
Oh, wow. Amazing work.
Oh, it's not done yet here. We got a little bit more to go.
Deborah O'Connor, welcome to SOR chat. Yeah. Enzo and Katie had breakfast for lunch right in front of me. Right
and
in front of me.
Every moment of it.
Yeah. Hey T, how are you? I can't talk about the protest. It's a silent protest. Silent protest. For now.
I hear a cat. Do you have a cat?
Sorry, that's Blob. She's whining.
Oh.
Blob.
I love cats. I wish I wasn't allergic to them. I would have a cat. I actually have a little cat friend when I move into this house here. It comes and visits me at my door. I tried giving her a little almond milk, but she doesn't like almond milk. But love kitties.
Blob's just upset she's not allowed outside.
Why does she want to go outside?
Well, she's a cat. She wants to be out there all the time, but she can't go outside. Dogman or Sasquatch will catch her and eat her.
Uh-oh.
Thank you, Pam, for that great super chat. Great show, great guest, great artist, and you, Mr. Dave. That would be me.
Mr. Dave.
Yep. Let's see. Joe Monk says Team Blob.
The other option you have is Team Whiskey, who's decided not to come inside the house for the night. So that's also probably why Blob's grumpy. She's like, "What does Whiskey get to stay outside?" It's not important.
My cats are indoor because there's a lot of wild animals around here that eat cats for dinner. It's always funny how many cats go missing each year in my neighborhood.
That's not good. What
it's like when you live in a farm, you need like 70 cats.
Mountain lions?
Mountain lions, foxes, bobcats, lynx, coyotes.
Do you think Bigfoot eats cats?
No, I think Bigfoot.
I don't think so either. I don't think Bigfoot would eat a cat. I hope not.
Yeah.
Anymore.
What about Dogman? Dogman's probably game for everything.
Yeah, probably.
All
I have
right,
a beautiful little red fox that walks across here every single day, and he'll just sit on the hill and look at me and then walk off. It's so cool. I just love all the animals out here. And I'm gonna miss the hummingbirds when they're gone. They're
Ours
getting all fueled up to leave.
ours left like 2 months ago.
Oh, did they? I know. I'm gonna be
Yeah.
sad when they're gone.
Yeah, I hate it when they leave. I love the hummingbirds. There's this one hummingbird every year when it shows up, it literally buzzes my head.
That's what mine do too. I have a whole bunch of them. They'll just sit there and flutter right in front of your face.
No, this thing goes right for my head, and that's like, and the message is like, "Hey, asshole, get the water feeders up ASAP." I'm back. Thank you to Pam, Chris, Gary, Obi Flett, and Smithy for the great super chats tonight. Here we go with the second half of the show, guys. Second half of Spaced Out Radio is kicking off, and my name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for tuning us in tonight. Very much appreciate it. Want to remind you that if you miss portions of this show or others, check out our free archives at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read Shirky Poo's Newswire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. For the final time tonight, Katie Paige is here. She is the state director for MUFON in Colorado. And Katie's been talking about Roswell all night long. Katie, I do have some audience questions for you. And this one, if you don't mind, comes from Adam. Katie, do you think it's possible for UFOs to look like airplanes in the sky?
Well, yes, I do. Well, I think it's possible that witnesses misidentify what they believe to be UFOs, but they're actually airplanes because of the light configurations and the angles. And, sometimes they all look like a triangle depending on how they are looking. I know we're always looking for the blinking light, but depending on how far they are, we often get reports like that. Sometimes they're mistaken for triangular craft and whatnot. But if you're talking about whether I think UFOs will cloak themselves as airplanes, no, I don't think they do that. But really quickly, I see in chat here, just going back to hummingbirds really quickly. Hummingbirds don't like the red dye in their juice. So if you do 4 cups of water and 1 cup of sugar with no red dye, they like that. Okay, I'm done with the hummingbirds. Sorry. I just had to say that.
That's okay. So for our radio audience, we were talking about hummingbirds.
Yes, we were talking during break.
Hummingbirds.
Hummingbirds.
Yeah, that's
hummingbird drones. Now that's an issue. I was out out where I shouldn't have been in Area 51 around the back gate. And it's a long story, but we got 3 flat tires within 2 days, 2 on one side. And we had the camo dudes. We had 1 at the front, 1 in the back. And one of our friends had to hike back to the little alien to get some help because we were stranded out there in the middle of the desert with our Twizzlers. Thought we were going to die. Thought we were going to be skeletons with Twizzlers. And I caught a picture of a jet going right above us. And in that photo is a picture of this quite large dragonfly drone. And I got a photo of that. It's a really cool photo. So those exist. Yeah.
Nice. Let's go to Raz. Is it difficult to just destroy all evidence? I think the government would have done that for Roswell.
I do think that it's quite possible that they destroyed most of the evidence. Why wouldn't you? However, that's why it's important to go back and link people and these connections, because they can't erase all of that. So if you can tie, like I'm like the judge to the owner of the mortuary, to the Freemason Lodge, to the general, to the and they all tie together and they all make sense, then that kind of lays out a story. So, and that's evidence you can't get rid of.
What do you think the key piece of evidence is for Roswell that we are missing?
Well, I think we want the metamaterials, to see actually these craft that they're back engineering possibly from the craft, and or find one of the bodies or evidence that they actually had bodies. And I think that is still possible to do. That's why I don't think we should give up, as old as it is. I do think that evidence can still be out there and can be found.
All right, let's go to another question here. This one's kind of fun from Raz. After confirmation of UFOs, that would be, why go to Vegas? Oh, to celebrate.
To celebrate and have a good time. And we'll have a lot to talk about. We'll have so much to talk about. Who disclosed what, and all the new information that came out. We're all going to have to talk about that stuff. So we'll have to get together to do that.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Katie, we talked about Eisenhower back in the last few minutes of the last half hour. And then moving up towards where we are today, you said your favorite decade of ufology is the 1970s. Why is that?
Well, because of my experiences that I had when I was a young girl, where I'm aging myself, but it was, 75 to 78 on that High Strangeness Ranch, which was very similar to the Skinwalker Ranch. So of course I'm interested in that decade. But also I've noticed through the research I've done, if you look back at that time, they were like a lot of, and I don't know if we chalk this up to like Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which came out in 1977, which by the way, when I was a little girl, I thought it was like a documentary because I was sort of living that life at the time. I'm like, oh, this is like fictional to other people. But anyway, I think it's interesting because there was a lot of like, the phenomenon was different. There was a lot of this theories, where it affected the electronics of the cars, sort of like in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where his trucks going crazy, or that these UFOs would go over power lines, or they were more like actual landings, where you had the impressions on the ground and you had the alien beings like working on the craft and people like encountering actual ET beings and stuff. Like it's changed since that. Now it's moved into, now a lot of our reports coming into MUFON are Tic Tacs. I wonder why. So a lot of this is cultural, right? It's what's popular culture, movies, all that. This does affect the reports that come through, and you can see that through the decades. So I think that's a fascinating, it's the human perception or perspective, the lenses that we're looking at the phenomenon through at the time. And so the 70s also, you didn't have Photoshop and you didn't have cell phones and so there's that aspect of it too that I like. And another thing I've noticed too is a lot of even just the other weekend when I was at David Marler's, is you're looking at these historical cases. And back then, UFO investigators really took this really seriously. Now, we're hard pressed to get a couple sentences for a conclusion of a case. Back then, you would have like 12 pages or, 20 pages of a report. I mean, they really investigated these sightings back then, like much more deeply, I think, than we do now. Now it's like we get so many and we roll through them and we're just kind of touching the surface. But back then you have pages upon pages and it's like they're doing all the, so to me, the research was better back then.
Well, it was definitely more hands-on than over the phone. You look at Travis Walton's case when the UFO investigators showed up. They were bringing all their weird, antiquated gear and everything along those lines to try and figure out what happened to them. And the idea that there was also more popularity in the stories. People weren't as quick to judge as they are today. Everything is fake today, unless it happens to you. Yeah, and that's the sad part of what we see today.
Yeah, that is true. And another thing I noticed too, like in the case of the Colorado Ranch, Not only did we have Dr. Leo Sprinkle Ph.D., but we had a seismologist out there who was a Ph.D., John Durr. We had Peter Van Arsdale, Ph.D. out there. We had psychics out there. We had, I found out that we had military men from Camp Carson, which was really interesting. I don't know why that was, but you kind of had groups of investigators from different what's the word I'm looking for? Specialties, or, different, a seismologist, a psychologist, a this or that, and they all go out there and they work a case together. So disciplines, that's the word I was looking for, different disciplines, and they would work these cases together. And I think that's really important. I think that's something we're lacking a little bit today too.
The camaraderie.
Yeah. And we're quick to just do everything online. Like, you can't just be a laptop researcher and you need to get out there and go to the locations. And yes, a phone call interview or a Zoom interview is better than nothing. But the best interview you can do is face to face. You learn so much more about a person being in the same room with that person. So it's really important to actually get out there in the field and go do the work. No matter what it is you're doing, whether it's ghosts, Bigfoots, or UFOs, or whatever it is, you need to actually get out in the field and not just research from, behind your desk. I'm a big component of that one.
Yeah, and I can understand why. Plus, it's a lot more fun. But
Yeah.
you talked about the camaraderie that was happening back then. I mean, everybody seemed to be working for the same subject. Was there some selfish people? Of
Yes.
course there was. Okay, but on the flip side is I got a moth buzzing me in my office right now. Yeah, Mothman has just invaded Spaced Out Radio headquarters here. But the idea that everybody tried to work together to bring some answers together, sharing research was very common. Whereas today, one person's research is another person's thing to try and steal.
Right.
I mean, we become very segregated with a lot of stuff. So I can see where that would have been a lot more enjoyable than what we see today.
Yeah, we did have the field classes. I mean, we had the debunkers and the naysayers. And in fact, in the Mars project for MUFON that I headed up, I came across, the original Travis Walton files, which was like 378 some pages of his original reports and stuff. And I asked Travis, I'm like, Travis, do you have copies of all this? And he's like, no, I don't. So we jumped in his truck and went and got a flash drive. And, I'm like, this is Travis's story. He should have all this stuff. So that was fun to get that original stuff back to Travis where it belongs, and of course he had the Phil class stuff in there, which was kind of crazy. And I feel bad for the latest that Travis has had to go through just in the last, year or two, with all this other nonsense coming out about him. He's one of the most genuine people I've ever known. And I certainly believe, that he was abducted. And I mean, to me, he's a very haunted person that has dealt his whole life with this incident that happened to him, and not always happy about it either. He just happened to him, and then his whole life was changed as it is for so many other people,
Yeah, there really is no turning back once it happens.
Yeah.
Couple questions from our audience for you, Katie. River City is asking, what's your take on the Senate hearings back in June?
The congressional hearings? Well,
Yeah.
First of all, I was really embarrassed how unprepared we were and how we couldn't stop this stupid little frame. I thought there was so much better evidence we could have put forward that I was just kind of like, why are they showing this? And, I overall, like I said at the beginning of the show, I was happy that, men and women, that they can report these things. The stigma's kind of being lifted a little bit. Overall, I was mostly disappointed and kind of scratching my head like, what the heck? Like, why weren't we better prepared? Why didn't they have pilot witnesses, military witnesses? Why weren't they speaking? I had questions on how this was.
Because we needed a 146-year-old geriatric senator to ask if we were sure it wasn't swamp gas.
Swamp gas, yeah. So it was frustrating. Most of it was frustrating, but
very true. Let's get to another question from YJ here. Katie, what's the most important UFO case or subject that needs more attention? Great question.
That is a great question. And I believe that the answer to that are these high strangeness locations because, Skinwalker Ranch, gets a lot of the attention, but we have so many of these places. And I think if we all came together and really researched, because there's so much of the phenomena that happens there, both with, the paranormal incidences and the orbs and the crypto creatures and all this stuff, Marley Woods and, with Trey Hudson in the South and the Colorado Ranch and the Skinwalker Ranch and the Bradshaw Ranch and all these Ohio Pile. There's another one in Pennsylvania. I would love to see more attention given to all these locations and trying to find commonalities with that. And I think that's beginning to happen, looking at different, what is it about the magnetic fields? And not only that, but we're even bringing like David Pilates and the missing 411 into that kind of equation too. Like what is happening in these locations that is causing, this phenomenon to either be seen, be interacted with, or allows this to occur. So I think that's where we need to go, like our consciousness part of it, the consciousness part of the whole phenomenon.
Yeah, I think that's the next step. Do you like the way, though, that people are starting to come out as experiencers, whether it's Jim Semivan, who's been part of the Black Ops programs for decades, or recently we saw Gary Nolan, this top scientist and professor from Stanford University, who's studying the effects on brains and the body that UFOs and ET contacts seem to have?
Yeah, the Havana syndrome is really interesting to me. So yeah, I think that is a huge area of study, and I'm super glad that contactees and experiencers are feeling more comfortable to be able to share these things. I mean, I know me personally, I hold back a lot of those experiences because you don't want to be judged or looked at as like you're crazy or whatever. So the more and more people that can open up and share about that, I think that is really super important. I think that's going to push the disclosure and the phenomenon to a better understanding more than anything else will, more than nuts and bolts ever will, really, you know.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's a good step forward to start hearing about the experiencers and start bringing them back into the fold, because in the end, if it wasn't for the experiencers, how much information will we really have on this subject? We've
Yeah,
gained so
exactly.
much from them. And there's a reason why Robert Bigelow or Hal Puthoff or Jim Semivan, John Alexander, going way back in the day, okay, even J. Allen Hynek, when he started believing that this was going on, this phenomena was here, we're going back decades here, that they've understood in the entire time that the experiencer has just as much information and sometimes more than what the nuts and bolts scientific crew will ever be able to solve.
Right. And something I'm really been interested in lately is this whole disassociation trauma connection to experiencers, not only of UFOs, but of ghosts and paranormal realms. And there's been a lot of studies with PhDs that have looked into this theory that it's actually, statistically proven that people that have a lot of trauma, whether, trauma can come in many forms. It could be a near-death experience. It could be physical abuse, mental abuse, sexual abuse, you name it, trauma. When we experience trauma, what do? We disassociate sometimes and we leave our bodies. And when we disassociate, it's almost like astral traveling or remote viewing. We tap into something else. When we tap into something else, it somehow connects us or opens ourselves up to experience perhaps the UFO phenomenon more, the paranormal, Bigfoot, these other things. So I find that theory and that bit of research really important. And I think that holds a lot of answers. Not only that, I also think that our five senses are so limited to what we can experience, see, hear, smell, taste, feel, all that stuff, that I think all these things kind of exist right outside of, where so we get little glimpses of these things, but, and I think some of us are able to maybe see a little bit wider than others, and that's why two people, I've always been fascinated by this with UFO reports. You can have a group of 6, 7 people, and people will experience it different. Some will see it, some won't. What is that about? Is that human perception, or is that because, Joe has just a little bit more to his senses and can see a little further in than maybe Sally can, or something, you know what I'm saying? So that always fascinates me as well.
Yeah, me too. I mean,
Yeah.
I've personally been in a group, and I've said this story on the air here before. I've been in a group where I saw pixelation of what looked to be pixelation standing from the ground to about 8-10 feet up a tree. And 2 of the 4 of us could see it.
Yeah.
The other 2 could not. And by the time we got walked another 20 seconds to the front of the house on this 10-acre property, we got roared at from right where that area was. Roared.
Scary.
And I've never heard anything that scary in my life. And it lasted, it seemed like minutes. It was probably 10 seconds, 12 seconds long,
Wow.
but it seemed like minutes. And every time I talk about it, I could still hear it in my head. But the question is, why didn't the other 2 see that
Right.
pixelation?
Right. And it makes you wonder if we manifest it. One of my favorite shows back in the day, was the Ghost Hunters, with Jason and Grant and Chris and Stephen Tango and that whole crew. I still love that show. So I would never miss it when it first came out. And I always wondered why Jason and Grant would always have these experiences, and Kristen and Amy or whoever was, the early ones on there didn't. And it was fascinating because if you really watch it, Amy Bruni at the time was quite a skeptic, and it seemed like the skeptical ones didn't experience as much as, say, the ones that were really open, like Jason and Grant. And I thought, now, is that because they're manifesting it to occur, so it's occurring more to them, or is it because they're more open to it that I just thought that was really interesting, and it was really noticeable, if you really watch it. Now, of course, I know it's a TV show, and all TV shows, kind of have to, make things entertainment for television, but I did get to go on a couple ghost hunts with them. I went to the St. Augustine Lighthouse in Florida with the Ghost Hunters, and also the Stanley Hotel. So they're really just cool, down to earth, great people. And I know that they actually do research just like we all do. That's what they love. That's what their passion is. So, not all of it is faked or whatever. They actually have really good evidence. So, I just often wondered, do we manifest this? Can we manifest it? And what kind of a reality are we really living in? All those deep questions, are we in the Matrix? I don't know.
Yes. Not Finding Ghost Hunters International.
Right. There is a kitty. Oh.
Yeah, that would be Blob.
Blob.
That would be
Paw prints on the art piece.
always. Blob always has to leave her mark on Dirty Filth's art. That's for sure. We got time winding down, Katie. We got about 90 seconds left with you tonight, and I want to say a big thank you for you coming back on Spaced Out Radio. Every time I get to chat with you or catch one of your own personal shows or get you on the air, I always feel smarter afterwards. So I want to say thank you for your great research. Keep up the amazing work.
Thank you, Dave. Thanks for having me, and thanks to all your listeners. It's great to see everybody again. So it's a lot of fun.
Well, if you could do us one favor, let everybody know where they can find your research. Let everybody know where they can find your podcast.
Yeah. Tuesday nights, it's 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern time on Tuesday nights on kgradb.com. And that's MUFON What's Up. And I do that along with Katie Cook. Katie Cook's kind of well known for her country music television. She's pretty awesome. I love her to death. And Christopher DePerno out of New York. So we try to keep it light beat, upbeat, and fun. And then you can find my research still at katiegraboski.com. I'm getting that changed over to Katie Paige one of these days, perhaps tomorrow. I don't know. I need to get that done. But I'm still at katiegraboski.com, katiegraboski.com.
Awesome. Katie, it's always a pleasure once again. And to learn more about Roswell and everything. And just so you know, well, pretty soon we're going to be announcing our 2023 Las Vegas event. Katie's going to be there.
Yes.
So if you want
I
to
wouldn't
come hang
miss
out
it.
with Katie is going to be there. I'm going to be there. Dirty Filth is going to be there. And many, many others are going to be hanging on out with us as well for our second annual event in Las Vegas. And it's going to be a lot of fun. And I highly suggest it was. And we're going to make sure it's more fun this year. And we're going to do more live programming on our YouTube channel with that as well. Thank you, Katie, for coming on Space Down Radio. Coming up next, we're going to head to the swamp. Our resident swamp dweller tells us a spooky story, then taking us home for the remainder of the show. It's the UFO Report with Goldilocks himself, Tim Senor. We'll be back with Hour 3 next. Great show, Katie. Great show.
Thanks everybody in chat too. That the positive comments are nice to see, and I think everybody in Vegas next year should all eat breakfast in front of Dave. That's what we'll do. Get a big table.
I don't eat breakfast anyways.
Aww. So
thanks,
best
Phil.
meal of the day. Well, good night, everybody.
I just don't even like breakfast anyway. Good night.
All right. Good night, Katie. Much
Night.
love. Take care.
You too.
All right. Katie, we'll say goodnight to her. Dirty Filth, you take over the ranch here, and I'll step away for a minute.
Dave stepping away. Except this time my microphone's working. Unless it was working last time. I don't know. I still haven't mastered this stuff yet, so you guys will have to be patient with me. These larger drawings take way more time. But we're almost done anyways. And then the inking. Favorite part. Sometimes. There's a dead alien right there. Dead alien. Damage exceeded hit points. For sure. Get his boots on. But anyways, I was rambling previously about if aliens master interstellar travel, they shouldn't be able to crash on Earth. I mean, it's terrible. Nonetheless, though, it's not important. Said it once. It's out there in the universe. Try a tic tac in there. Then black triangle. Gotta have a black triangle. Gotta have a black triangle. I think the black triangle is probably my favorite UFO. Or UAP. Or whatever they call them now. Ooh, I'm gonna break out the silver again. Ooh, the old silver brush. Oh yeah, I forgot about the clipboard here. Because Katie is holding a clipboard. So she can make sure she makes notes. She went back 1947 in Roswell just to make sure. Check, there's a corpse there. Yep, there's an alien corpse. Enough. Sounds like this giant wind turbine outside my house. The extinction of humankind will be a virus. I don't know. Probably be lack of pizza, if anything. All right, I gotta get the silver out of the way so it can dry faster. That way, if the cats decide to walk on top of it, then there'd be less fluff attached to it. Ah, crap. That's all right. All right, silver on the craft because they got to be silver. The old 1947 models. the 1940s were the last years aliens started it was last year they stopped using diesel for their aircraft. That's pretty much why there's not a lot of crashes after that for the most part. Except Carl, he still got his old 1942 clunker. Yeah, after that they went to the Element 115. And then everybody knows about that because Bob Bizarre. All right, there we go. Silver on that. All right, here we go. Oh, there's Dave coming back now.
Hello, dirty filth.
Hello, Dave.
How you doing?
I'm doing excellent. Just about done all the painting parts of this. I figured I'd get the silver bit
You're doing
done.
a big one for her.
Well, she wanted 8 by 10 or 7 or whatever it was, right? So
Holy cow.
big ones take a little bit longer.
Hi, one hot to Ollie. Welcome to SOR chat again. And who else is hopped in here?
I need water.
I could use some water. Grab me some too. All right, a big thank you as we cleared on in. A big thank you tonight to Thomas and Pam and Chris, Gary, Obi Flett, and Smithy for the amazing super chats. Very much appreciate your love and support of SOR. Hi, Mark D. Truth Seeker. How you doing, buddy? And we're going to get going here in about 10 seconds. And then we're going to get to the Swamp Dweller. And then Uncle Timmy's going to come by. And he's got a few stories of UFO stuff that's quite hot to trot tonight. Here we go.
Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to sit with us through this awesome and amazing show of woo right around the world. Want to say hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America and digitally on Odyssey Radio, TalkStream Live, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. Join us at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. What do you got for us, Clam? Zamoka. Zamoka is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read Shirky Poo's Newswire. Check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. It is time once again for us to head into the swamp. Our resident swamp dweller takes us on another journey into the spookiness.
Hi, Spaced Out Radio listeners. This is Swamp Dweller. It's time for your nightly dose of spookiness on the show. If you have an interesting encounter or a spooky story that you would like to share, be sure then at Swamp Dweller. You can also find our YouTube channel at youtube.com/SwampDwellerReads. Now, let's chill out, relax, and together, let's enter the swamp. I thought I'd share one of the creepiest experiences I've ever had, though not the only experience I've had with the supernatural. Around 2001, I was 8 years old. My brothers were 5 and 1, respectively. We moved from Johannesburg to a town called Heidelberg. The house we moved into was a rather beautiful area, big by our standards. For context, the lounge, entertaining room, dining room, office, and 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, kitchen, and washroom were all relatively big. That made the passage long. It was in the restroom, and the path that the presence was always the strongest. I felt scared from the first moment we moved in. and it didn't stop until all 3 of us kids went into foster care. As far as I know, it's still there. For the most part, we just felt intense fear and a feeling that someone was following us and trying to hurt us. At first, my mother kept saying I was spooking myself and imagining things, and my stepdad was completely atheist and didn't believe in anything paranormal. After that, I didn't mention it again, but we always ran down the passage and never walked. Every time I had to force myself down that hallway for whatever reason, as I ran, I felt like something was literally at my heels, breathing down my neck. After a few months, my mother figured out that we never went into the washroom, no matter what, and it became her new favorite punishment for us. She would lock us in there, switch off the lights outside the room, and leave us there overnight. It was adequate for a while, but eventually it backfired because we ended up growing up past fear into just not caring anymore. About 2 years later, we went into foster care and my parents stayed in that house. Close to the end of my last year in high school, they had to sell the place due to financial issues due to destructive lifestyles. My stepdad told me a few years later that on the last night he stayed there, to switch off the pool pump and everything at the main switch, etc., he felt the thing clear as day. He said it was the darkest thing he had ever felt, and there was no doubt that it wanted him dead. As he said, he didn't believe in anything paranormal that couldn't really be proven. Not God, not demons, nothing. Even he admitted that there was something there, some sort of dark, evil presence. We still don't know what it was, but we know exactly what it wants. I would give the address, but other people have moved in, so I can't breach their privacy. Thanks for taking these stories, Swamp Dweller. It's good to share with other people. Hey Swamp Dweller, my name is Rose. I've been listening to your channel for about a year now, and I feel like I should share my story. This happened to me over many years. I was 6 years old when it started, and 9 years old when it ended. A few paranormal things happened to me. I hope it's alright to share them. When I was 6 years old, I lived in a small town in Alberta. Kids used to come into my house, telling me they'd plow them because it was evil. I didn't believe them until middle of summer. My room was set up so my door was on the bottom wall, my bed was on the left wall, and my dresser was a beautiful chestnut color mirror above it. I remember waking up in the middle of the night, not sure why, looking in my mirror and seeing a black figure sitting beside me. I looked at the space where the figure should have been, then back at the mirror, and it was standing up. It looked at me with deep red eyes, and I booked it out of there. I was sobbing, telling my parents what happened. My mother believed me, and we did a cleansing. I didn't see it for quite some time, but I knew it was watching me from a distance. When I was 8 years old, my mother and I went to another small town called Vulcan. My grandmother lived there and brought a ghost back with us. Her name was Sarah. I could see her and hear her, and she was looking for her mommy. I couldn't find her. I said she could come home with us, and I think she did. I made her a bed on my floor every single night, and the pillow had a small dent in the morning, like someone had been laying there. I called her my sister and we played games. She came with me to daycare and I asked her to scratch my back, and I would literally feel my shirt move. And the girls I was showing all screamed and said I was cursed. We found out that Sarah's mother lived at my grandma's home and passed away. When we found that out, I told Sarah she needed to be with her mother. And found out Sarah was murdered. It was May Day when all the small towns got together and did those little carnivals, and someone took her from it and murdered her. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if she had stayed with me.
Very creepy indeed tonight from the swamp, courtesy of Swamp Dweller. You can check out thousands of his stories by going to youtube.com/Swamp Dweller Reads. All of his stories are free. The only thing he has, hit that subscribe button on his channel. I love it. Love Swamp Dweller. Listen to him every night right after the show. Let's shift back to UFOs. It's time for the UFO Report at Tim Senor.
Nobody's gonna know. They're gonna know.
All right, Tim Senor with the UFO Report coming on in. before he heads next week back to Vernal, Utah, and some studying back on near Skinwalker Ranch. And, we're glad to have Tim back. And thank you so much for joining us today, buddy.
Thanks for having me, Dave. It's great to see you.
Busy night or busy day in ufology the last couple of days. Very busy.
Indeed. Back to UFO radio.
A lot of opinion, a lot of question marks, a lot of weird stories. I mean, my goodness, man, where do we even start here tonight? I think we should start probably with an article that came out in the Popular Mechanics about the fact that the U.S. government is investigating that UFOs are not man-made. What do you got for this?
That's a good report. Okay. So a new congressional report redefines UFOs as unidentified aerospace undersea phenomenon and updates how we sort them, man-made or not. The changes reflect evolving language around defense across various domains, and the government is likely considering Russia and China to be the real threats, though the report leaves things open to interpretation. And so this recent congressional document has revealed plans to divide the unidentified flying objects into two groups. Excuse me. And those that are understood to be human-made and those that are not. It also expands upon the scope of UFOs, which are no longer limited to just flying objects, by redefining them as unidentified aerospace undersea phenomenon. And so this is an addendum to the Authorization Act coming from the Intelligence Agency for the fiscal year of 2023. So this is the rebadging and the government's admitting that some of these reports aren't of man-made source. Dave, I know you're excited. Let's talk about it.
I am excited by this because I think it opens up a whole new door of ufology. It really does. And I think reading between the lines, and I know a lot of people are sick of me saying that statement, reading between the lines. I think it really goes to show that the United States government knows a heck of a lot more than what they are leading on to the public at this point. All right, for them to make the call, and it's not all of them. Let's be honest, it's not all of them. But for some of them at the Pentagon or within the government or military to make the call that these are not human-made craft. They are possibly extraterrestrial, ultra-terrestrial, time-traveling craft, whatever you want to call them. That is a big step towards where is our future going? Where are we leading to? Where is this taking us? And it's one of those little snippets, Tim, that comes with a million questions that will never be followed up by the media or never be answered by the government. And it's sad because we keep getting led on by things like this. We do. So I'm torn. I like hearing it. The experiencer in me is like, well, of course, where the hell do you think they were coming from? But there's a harsh reality to it too, that it might be years before that admission is made again. When I say years, I'm talking decades. Hey, it could happen tomorrow, could happen the next day, but the likelihood isn't.
That's right. That's right. And with 75 years of silence, it doesn't look like they're going to open the books anytime soon. But they did speak of 24 reports that were considered not of man-made origin in their last public hearing. And I think that screams interesting. And it goes into that other box here that they're talking about. And so, we're going to see a lot more of this coming in the next hearing. And I think that the fact that they're considering USO or the underwater submerged object, or I think that they're highlighting the fact that they're looking into not just aerospace for this phenomenon is a huge flag. if you will, to the fact that they are opening and expanding their horizons on their data search. We know now that Galileo Project is taking a look at the bottom of the ocean to start. At the same time as they're looking into the skies, I think that that shows that this research needs to be on ground, in the air, and below the water, looking at the ocean floors and taking a look at some of those maps that we have of the ocean floors, maybe, and reconsidering some of the data we already have. But absolutely interesting that they're relabeling again to include the ocean, as part of where they're going to be looking for the phenomenon. I mean, that is the most interesting part for me personally, with this, that they're relabeling it again.
Well, I think too, as we move forward, if you take into account Jim Semivan and Gary Nolan coming out the last few months as experiencers, it does make sense that the government would start to make that turn of these craft being of non-human origin. It makes complete sense because things happen in patterns, Tim. They happen in patterns, and it's easy to find if you know what you're looking for. And that's why I always tell our audience, read between the lines. The story is right there. The story is right in front of your eyes.
And so for yourself, as a journalist in this story for so long, what is this pattern that you're seeing?
Well, I mean, I think it all leads to more experiential talk. I think we're going to see more people come out as experiencers, maybe even people we don't know, maybe government officials. What would it mean? And I'm speaking totally tongue-in-cheek here. What would it mean if all of a sudden Christian Gillibrand or Marco Rubio came out as an experiencer? What would it mean if the face of disclosure, Luis Elizondo, came out as an experiencer? What would it mean if the silly rumors of Barack Obama, the former president, being a time-traveling chrononaut were true? All right? Hey,
right.
You can't make this stuff up. This stuff has been brought out.
Right.
But the thing is, Tim, we don't know. We don't know. But what we do know is that the keen interest that is happening with big names such in this field, such as Jim Semivan and now Gary Nolan, talking about their own ET contact that they have had, and the government now saying and admitting, finally, after 5 years, it's not Russia, it's not China. There is no threat narrative coming from Asia and Eastern Asia, like many of people in ufology told you so. It all leads down to one thing: contact. And in these little symbols that they are making, Tim, and statements that they are saying, does this mean that they are actually slowly but surely starting the brainwash process of contact?
Yeah, well, they're definitely considering the other box, and that is huge. The fact that they're discussing openly UFOs being potentially not man-made. That's massive. That's not a dialogue we've ever heard coming from our government before. And I think Ross Coulthart had an incredible interview with Gary Nolan, where Gary was very open, talking about his multiple experiences that he's had with UFO in his life, as a child, and then again, I believe, as an adult. And so, it may take an experiencer to know an experiencer, if you will. And so he's the right man for the job. And to be honest, I think most of us that have seen a ton of video or talked to a ton of witnesses know when they're hearing something genuine. And to hear Gary Nolan speak on his experiences demonstrates somebody that has had a real experience and understands that this is a very strange topic to be serious about. And so for somebody coming from Stanford University with his background being now up for a Nobel Prize as a nominee, He's being taken seriously on a topic that is really hard to be taken serious. So he's absolutely the right man for the job because he represents it coming from a man of knowledge, a place of knowledge, with his experience, his lifelong experience with the phenomenon, and then his knowledge and his understanding of science that he's bringing to the table. So he's able to bring that along with it and to demonstrate. And this is no surprise that he's been part of the UAP task force since the beginning. And he's absolutely the right person to be talking on these topics. I'm glad he's representing experiencers personally.
And what a job that is being done out there, okay, in trying to move the ball forward. I could only imagine how difficult this is. We don't know what's happening politically behind the scenes or within the Department of Defense or Space Force or anything. We don't know how hard the job has been for people like Lou Elizondo or Chris Mellon. You know, the up and down roller coaster battles that they have fought on public levels and on personal levels behind the scenes to keep their names in the loop from not being canceled. It has to be incredible. I don't know if I could handle that much pressure of what's going on. And now you throw Gary Nolan into the mix. I mean, he doesn't care. He has it made at Stanford. He's got a laboratory named after him. He walks around that school like he is a science god. He has, I believe, on the UFO front, done experimentation and studies on over 200 people who claim to have had close encounters with UFOs or extraterrestrials, that he's studied their brain and their bodies to see what effects have happened. And I think it's great. We need more of that. You know, we don't need more groups. We don't need more documentaries of dots. We don't need, more, bogus information of Batman balloons and weird things that when zoomed in look like triangles in night vision cameras. We need more proof. So what is proof? Well, proof can be anything. If a person's anecdotal story matches up with a photograph or a video taken by a third party, that's pretty good, isn't it? That's acceptable, right? Or maybe somewhere out there, some farmer's field in the middle of Iowa or somewhere like that, maybe there's a piece of UFO debris that fell off that we can use for testing. Who knows?
Yeah, and also the biological signatures that Gary's getting into, with the physiological changes that people go through for before and after a UFO experience. I think that's massive, and looking into the people that have had these experiences and getting into the biological changes that their bodies have gone through, signatures that only experiencers have. That to me is also incredible evidence.
I agree with you on that. You can't argue logic. You just can't, Tim. And, there's a lot of illogical going on. There's a lot of posturing going on. And I am sure that, somebody like Chris Mellon or Lou Elizondo is not having an easy time with things right now, even from their own people. I mean, let's face it, that old saying, my enemy of my enemy is my friend now. And I'm sure that's happening a lot with the government in trying to derail and cancel this subject that we love so much. And I don't know where this is going. I don't know what the answers are or where the answers are. Does it lead to more congressional hearings? And if so, how public are those going to be? Is it going to be a waste of time like we saw previously? Or is it going to be seeing immunity granted for military members to break their NDAs on this subject? I want to see that. I want to be a fly on the wall. I volunteer.
Yeah, and I definitely think that we're going to keep seeing traces of them trying to control the narrative. The same way we recently saw Susan go out Lou Elizondo as being part of the Space Force. These little slips, that's their way of controlling things. And I also feel that we're going to see more things like that slipping out. You may not be a Lou Elizondo fan, you may not care here or there, but it's the fact that they're controlling the information about these people. And often they don't attack the cases, they don't attack the information, they attack the people.
And that's why we love Tim Senor here for the UFO Report. When we return with Tim, we're going to stop by Stanford University, where scientist Gary Nolan warns of massive UFO alien disclosure coming soon, and whistleblowers are ready to speak. Next on the UFO Report. I swear to God, I'm going to kill this moth.
That is good radio. Moth killing.
Yeah. You should have seen the wasp hunt on Sunday, man.
Waspocalypse.
Oh, waspocalypse happened. I know there's one more nest in there. I know there is. And I'm going after it tomorrow.
So round 1 was sting free and successful?
35-0, buddy. 35.
I've got one leg in those pants already, buddy.
Oh, dude. You're nailing it.
Good stuff.
Missed it.
Hey, Filth. How's it going, buddy?
He's dirty as ever.
Oh, not bad.
I love your piece of art tonight. It's awesome.
It's almost done. I just got the lettering. The most painful part. The thing I respect more than anybody in the world are people that do.
Oh, shoot. I got to go to my protest camera.
Protest cameras? No, the people that
My
do
protest
lettering.
He's pro-cannabis. Pro-cannabis.
See that dot right there? See that dot right there?
Is that
On
a
my
cigarette burn?
flag? No, that is a giant daddy long legs.
Oh,
Here, let's see if I can zoom in.
it's
Look
making
at
a
that.
statement
You can
that it is pro-cannabis. I love your cannabis flag, buddy. It's so awesome.
That's a Canada flag.
Okay, I mean Canada. Sorry, I always get that confused.
Yes.
Canada, cannabis. I just know you're a
Yeah.
supporter. I'm just kidding,
You
bud.
see- There we go. Peace.
I know you're a Canadian, eh? You're not a hoser.
Always. Once a hoser, always a hoser. Hey, Cryptid 559er, how are you? I have seen those salt shotguns. I need one, but they'll probably get banned by the current prime minister because we're not allowed to have fun that way. I'm telling you, 35-0, Tim. 35-0.
I actually am really glad that you're having success and you're not getting, stung. So that's good news, bud.
You have to watch them. You have to watch them. When they start getting aggressive, you got to pull back.
Yeah,
Let 'em
they might try and flank you.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, classic military technique.
Mm.
All right. Let's have a gander here.
And so you never know with Prime Minister Pretty Boy. You never know what he'll ban next. He tried. Put it this way: his latest stupid statement was that people are angry with the liberal politicians in power right now, not due to their ineptitude, but because of climate change. Climate change is the reason why Canadian people are speaking out against their presiding powers in Ottawa. Not the fact that they're doing a terrible job right now. But
Dirty
climate-
Filth has no comment.
Tim
You
doesn't
can't
either.
make this, dude, you can't make this stuff up. That's the truth.
We also have paper juice box water bottle sort of things up in Canada.
What I don't understand is paper straws.
Oh,
That
I
is the
hate.
most frustrating thing ever invented by man. Paper straws.
They need to coat them in wax.
I mean, Dave, they need you on the board.
Just coat the straws in wax. You can have paper straws. Wax doesn't hurt the planet. Coat the straws in wax on the inside, not the out, on the inside.
He's a
The
genius.
It's not that difficult. Thank you tonight to Molly, Thomas, Pam, Chris, Gary, Obi Flett, and Smithy. And for clarification, Michael Morris, yes, it is a no politics rule unless you're taking shots at the Canadian Prime Minister. That's the only thing we allow. Low Pro, Prairie Fire, how you doing? That's all we allow. Use earwax from Dave. My ears are clean. What a jerk comment. Use earwax from Dave. All right, we're coming back here in like 4 seconds. Rounded third, headed for home tonight on Spaced Out Radio. Touch 'em all, Joe. The old Blue Jays. Joe Carter's home run to win the World Series over the Wild thing. Mitch Williams took the ball over the left field wall by like inches. Yeah, we remember those days. Hey, I want to remind you that if you missed most of this show or others, check out our free archives at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read Shirky Poo's Newswire. Check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. We continue on tonight with the UFO report. Little Timmy Senor is here, and we are going to head over to Stanford University in California, one of the Ivy League schools, where Professor Gary Nolan, who is very much into ETs, is saying we need to start prepping for full disclosure, and more whistleblowers are going to come on out very soon. Tim, take it away.
That's right. A new article from How and Why's. A massive UFO disclosure is about to happen, as Stanford professor Gary Nolan claims that the government has been covering up suspected UFO visits and possession of technology that has been coming from another planet for decades. Dr. Nolan contacted important people in the government who have closely investigated UFOs and asserted that they are about to disclose some information. And so on August 21st, 2022, Dr. Nolan had an interview with Ross Coulthart on the Australian channel News 7, where he discussed his role in working with the government on analyzing and studying individuals that encountered UFOs. According to Nolan, there is a group of people that were involved in recovering UFO debris for secret government programs, and these individuals will soon be coming forward to reveal all they know. And so, when you say that the government has been involved in a cover-up, do you think that they've been hiding it all this time? Coulthart asked. Oh yes, I know it's a fact because I've spoken to important people who are about to come out and whistleblow on it. No, this is a direct quote from Nolan. So he has first-hand information here that these whistleblowers are coming forward. And so I'm pretty excited to hear, if we're getting transparency now, hopefully we'll get details from these people when they come out. What do you think is going to happen, Dave?
You know what? I want to see who the whistleblowers are. Who are they? Are they going to be people that we know? Or are they going to be more like Lou Elizondo types that are out of the woodwork that have maybe been working in this field or have worked in this field in, say, the last 25, 30 years. I mean, we could see people coming out as experiencers as well, maybe former Men in Black, if that program ever existed. You know, there's a lot that can happen here. And, you know, I just hope, for the sake of what we do, I really hope that these whistleblowers come to the table. And I think a lot of this, Tim, is riding on the proposal that after the next budget passes in the U.S., that this is going to come down to whether or not immunity is granted. If immunity is granted to these people where they can speak publicly about what they've seen, what they've experienced, what they've heard, the reports they have taken, the craft that they have eyewitnessed themselves, and potential of talking or intercepting radio waves from UFOs and or extraterrestrials.
Yeah.
I want to see that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think once that door opens, the question is, though, who are they going to be whistleblowers to? Are they going to be whistleblowers just for the sake of being able to speak their 15, 20 minutes in front of government officials? Or are they going to be whistleblowers like Elizondo who come out into the public eye and rip this topic wide open? That's where we need to see. That's what we need to figure out. Because to me, a whistleblower is not someone who's doing it behind the scenes, behind the curtains at the Congress, at your congressional buildings down in Washington, D.C. A real whistleblower gets in front of the public, gets in front of the microphones, okay, does interviews, news stories are done about him or her, goes on podcasts like there's so many great ones out there discussing these subjects. That's what I hope happens.
Yeah. And wouldn't it be great if Gary Nolan brought his test subjects forward with the data that he finds out about the changes that they've had physiologically, and then those witnesses come forward with how that happened and their interactions with UFO. And they did this through public hearings and in front of Congress. I mean, that's kind of the perfect scenario where you have as much data with a corroborating story. You know, that would be one great hypothesis of it coming forward. But I think a big problem that we're seeing is how things are actually classified from the very top. So at the time of the report, when it's created, whoever's writing that report, they're the people that classify it. And of course, we're seeing that these things are classified based on how that data is collected sometimes, not even on the information in the report itself. So it's incredibly frustrating to see how this stuff filters down, and that we're having to rely on whistleblowers to come forward. But in an ideal situation, it would be something like that, something where we have multiple data points along with the whistleblower's story, not just anecdotal stories. You know, we really need to come with evidence at this point. You know, proof and evidence is hard to come by, but people like Gary Nolan are attempting that by getting data and then a corroborating witness. And so that would be my idea of what a whistleblower that he would know about would potentially be, something along those lines. And in which case, that would kind of be ideal, Dave.
It would. And once again, I hope they are strong people with strong stories to tell. That's what we need, Tim. That's what we need. We got to continue on here. Let's head over to The Hill, where thehill.com was reporting an op-ed piece that the Pentagon is talking about all these UFO videos, and it's finally time to release them to the public.
That's right. The Pentagon has at least 24, and likely far more, the UFO videos in its possession. And so despite public commitments to transparency, officials refuse to release any of the footage. But the government's rationale is that the disclosure would jeopardize sensitive sources and methods, and likely holds no water in many of the videos. So in March of 2019, amid increasing military encounters with objects appearing to exhibit highly advanced flight characteristics, the Navy instituted a standardized UFO reporting mechanism. And despite heavy redactions, these reports show that fighter pilots are frequently left stunned by such incidents. And so, very importantly, the Navy's new reporting procedures allow aviators and intelligence officers to submit video footage and other sensor data. In response to a Freedom of Information Act recently, the Navy confirmed that 24 videos are associated with 19 UFO reports spanning June through December of 2019. And so if the Pentagon continues receiving 20 UFO videos every 6 months, it would have well over 100 videos in its possession by now. And so, of course, increased awareness and the new reporting mechanism and reduced stigma likely resulted in aviators submitting far more UFO footage than ever before. And so, moreover, the 24 videos accompanying the 19 reports, it appears that air crews are unlikely to submit a UFO report without including corroborating data. So this is massive. This is a very interesting piece of information. And if you actually look into the actual release in the FOIA, it reads as so that in this request, it has been identified that the 24 videos that are responsive to your request, quote unquote, these videos have been deemed classified and are exempt from disclosure in their entirety under exemption, blah, blah, blah. And this is in order to protect national security information concerning the national defense or foreign policy from disclosure, provided that it has been properly classified in accordance with this blah, blah, blah. So again, we're seeing the facts are being hidden because of how they've obtained the data. And so sourcing methods are keeping these videos classified from us. And so, Dave, there's still going to be stumbling blocks moving forward, and we're hoping to clamber for transparency. But even in a FOIA, they're only hinting at the information.
Well, I mean, do you have the videos or not? Let's just get right to it. Are the videos there or not? If the videos are there, do they harm national security? That was the big argument about everything regarding the videos. What do they have that does not harm national security? Okay. Every video we have seen so far is a nothing burger for harming national security. And there's the big siren. The fire department's being called out as we speak. They're going to look for UFOs right now. The aliens are coming by SOR headquarters. It's beautiful. I don't even have to pay for that security. Hold on, it's gonna ring one more time here. Fantastic. They're gonna fire it up one more time.
Alien alarm. I love it.
Here it comes. Hold on. There it is. I absolutely love the alien siren. The sad part is, it's
Silent
something.
Hill.
Well, no, something bad is going on right now in reality.
Yeah.
And I don't like that. I like to brighten it up, saying that that's my alien siren. There's a UFO flying over right now, maybe with Bigfoot attached at the bottom of it. But no, getting back to the Hill article, I thought it was a great op-ed piece, and I do believe that it's time that we start saying and putting pressure on, saying, where are the videos? Where are they? We don't need a Jeremy Corbell, and this has nothing to do with Jeremy Corbell or Tim McMillan or some of the great faces that have brought videos out previous. Okay, we don't need them. What we need is someone from the Pentagon to say, this is what we have for you. Remember this whole transparency thing we were talking about? This is what we have. Let's make this happen. All right? Let's make this work for us. And that's what we need. Tim, we don't need any more. And if there's that many videos out there, you don't have to release them all at one time. Do a couple here, a couple there, a couple every couple weeks. Stagger them out.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting again that we're seeing that the sourcing methods is the stumbling block on declassifying the information. It's not the information itself. It's not the fact that these are videos of potential UFO. It's the fact that it was potentially taken by a camera that is not maybe made public, or maybe it's over a part of the world that we're not supposed to be. But the fact remains is that it's interesting information that we'll never actually probably get to see as the public, simply because of the sourcing method. And so part of the reconstruction of how things are classified from the very top were in discussion just a few months ago. And I think it's also in need to be highlighted here again. If we expect any of the facts to get trickled down to the people that need to know about it, you have to change how things are classified at the source. And so it's a problem. And no matter how good of a FOIA request writer you are, if it's information that's sourced via methods that are classified, you're never going to get that information. You'll just get vague numbers about information that could be real or could just be mundane. And so who knows what they're looking at? But the frustrating parts come that we can kind of assume that what they're being shown is probably, again, drone videos. They're not trying to convince or change any minds. This is 75 years of cover-up, and the fact that they're just now starting to break into an other box, they're not going to rapidly fill that other box. That's going to be a hard sell. And even if that box gets filled, the public may only hear that it gets filled and may never see what it's filled with.
Very true. Let's go to our final story. But before we do, Dirty Filth, our cartoonist, who does a great job each and every night drawing cartoons during our show. You can watch it on our YouTube channel or Twitch. His dad apparently listens to the show every night. So we want to give a big shout out tonight and say hello to Corporal Wayne, formerly of the PPCLI, Canadian Armed Forces, Royal Canadian Armed Forces in the Army Division, for Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry is what it stands for, PPCLI. Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry out of Edmonton, Alberta. We love our veterans around here. And thank you, Corporal Wayne, for your amazing service in the Royal Canadian Armed Forces. We very much appreciate you tuning us in and showing us the love as well. All right, final story of the night. We got about 5 minutes here, Tim. And this one, I'm just shaking my head. All right, I am. It comes from a Catholic theologian, and this is nothing against the Catholic religion. So let's not, start tearing our hair out here.
Do you have it in front of you, Dave?
I do.
Would you read us on in? Because I don't actually have it. Please.
All right.
Your creamy peanut butter voice. Yes.
This is from Australia, called perthnow.com.au. Okay. Aliens are actually demons sent by evil powers. Here we go. Religious scholars claim that there are several parallels between UFO sightings and demonic encounters as they seek to explain to worshippers why there is no suggestion of alien existence in religious texts. Catholic theologian Dr. Paul Thigpen said that NASA's probe into UFOs suggests that officials know a lot more than what they're telling. He said, the diabolical hypothesis that they are demons best accounts for some reports, especially some of the so-called alien abductors that demonstrate clear parallels with what the church knows as demonic encounters. The theory was also proposed by late Archbishop Chrysostomos of Etna, who said, ultimately one cannot escape the conclusion. The alien abductors are demons or phantoms created by demonic power. If these musings prove correct, we have an intimate battle of good against evil on our hands of Steven Spielberg proportions. At least according to psychic Uri Geller, who is a famed spoon-bending ability, last year claimed aliens are preparing to make contact with human races. Moreover, he says there is no doubt extraterrestrials exist and that UFOs have been visiting Earth secretly for thousands of years, which would explain The Exorcist. Apparently, the writer thinks that this would explain it. But yeah, so here we have a Catholic theologian, but here's the funny part about this story, Tim. That theologian obviously didn't do his homework from the Vatican. Vatican has a very keen interest in space with their Lucifer telescope in New Mexico.
Yeah.
We have Pope Francis a few years ago stating that if ETs showed up on this planet, he would be more than happy to baptize them. We have them doing a study over the last 6 years on how people from different religions would react to extraterrestrial contact. The Vatican has been preparing for what maybe they know in their vaults for a lot of time, a lot of thinking. And I think Mr. Theologian, personally, my opinion, is a little narrow-minded in his comments. And look, I'm going to state this, Tim. I know you're a nuts and bolts talk religion. Okay. But I'm a guy. Okay. I am. I always have been. I don't profess to any religion. It's just a personal belief that I have. And I'm not as the alpha, and science has already proven that the universe is infinite, still growing. Who are we to say that God didn't create life elsewhere before he came to Earth and did it here? That's a pretty naive thinking of anybody on this planet. That's like me saying that everybody who comes from Florida is a meth head, is a drug addict, is crazy, has a criminal record. That's not true. Or that every Canadian lives in an igloo and rides a moose, and the kids, have to walk uphill both ways to get to and from school in the morning in 6 feet of snow. That's not true. So to sit there and say, as we wind it up here, that if God is the creator and the Alpha and Omega, that we're his only life form, somebody needs to wake up. And on that note, Tim, I'm sorry I didn't get an opinion from you on that one. I really wanted one, but we ran out of time.
Thanks for having me on tonight, Dave. It's been fun, buddy.
I always appreciate you, my friend, and we will talk to you in a couple nights' time for another UFO report. Tim Senor, everybody. He is absolutely amazing at what he does each and every time he is on this show. We very much appreciate his smarts, his knowledge, and research going in to the UFO topic. It only makes us stronger each and every time he's on. Big thank you to Swamp Dweller and to Katie Paige for an amazing show tonight. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thaw rocking in the background with Little Brother is watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at home, at work, in your cars, wherever you may be. Thank you to everyone in our chat rooms tonight. YouTube, Twitch, LGAP, Facebook, Space Travelers Club, Spreaker, and on Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thank you so much for choosing to share your evening with us, because together, my friends,
we're watching.
We own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Yes, the Woo train has docked for the night. But soon, my friends, we shall ride again. Your seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, we've got room for them too. Good night. Thank you. Oh. Yeah.
Dave, you're not
Hey,
supposed to
there's-
inhale while you swallow.
Oh, man, that one hit me. Hey, there's Puss. All right, let's do this. So what's your opinion of that story there, Tim?
I liked the term diabolical hypothesis as the kind of encompassing term for that theory. I think that that's pretty cool. The idea of it is definitely not something I entertain, but not for any theological reason other than it just doesn't just from personal experience, it didn't look like that to me, what I saw. But it would be hard for me to interpret it. I don't have enough knowledge, man, to really speak on it, to be completely honest. I don't know enough to have an idea to even scratch the surface on it. Before my family's experience in 2019, I knew nothing of this. So I'm really a babe in the woods on this stuff. And then to add this, as another hypothesis is kind of a biggie. It doesn't check all the boxes for me, but again, a lot of these don't. It's tough. I think that you can definitely maintain your beliefs and still have ETs as a reality, because I definitely think, that we as humans with our belief, it doesn't have any boundaries. It's universal. So anything within the universal purview would be within the realm of okay. So it makes sense to me that, the Pope would be down to bless their ship when they came and landed. That makes sense to me. But again, yeah,
it's
just
just
pretty big.
Tim, it's ignorance, though. And you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't talk out of both sides of your mouth.
Right. I guess can I rebut this and say if with a diabolical hypothesis, wouldn't there have to be an angelical hypothesis to match that? Like, wouldn't that mean that some of them have to be extremely good if some of them are extremely bad? I mean, that would just be my rebuttal to someone that had this as their hypothesis.
Absolutely. I think that's a smart one. Look, there's a place for logic for this. There really is. And I've talked to a number of religious people about this subject locally here, and they all spin the same yarn. And I think what's happening here is a lot of the religious scholars and professors who talk about the subject of being an evil or demonic entity, I think they state that more so out of fear than logic.
I can understand that. For me, coming from a deeply scientific background, a scientific family, it's the same paradigm being kicked in as somebody that has a deeply religious background. Absolutely. And I would compare them because, not that my family holds science as you believe in science, right? The same way people believe in religion. So although one is maybe provable on paper, I think the other is provable in soul, richness. So
absolutely, man.
It's a really tough one to gauge. I enjoy all of the ideas on it because I think you have to look at every aspect to get any point, and there's probably a bit of truth in it, because it seems like there's a little bit of something right in every part of this.
Agreed.
because my experience hasn't been great, right? But you know, with UFO, as far as my family's contact, that wasn't great, but it hasn't been supremely negative or anything. And I think that my search for the answers on it has been something positive. You know, my number one motivation is to figure it out for my family, you know, to find out what's going on with us, you know. But at the same rate, I think somebody that has a religious experience may do that search as well, you know. So even me being a scientist and trying to gauge it with science, somebody that had the same sighting as my family in 2019 with a bunch of scientists, they could have had it with a deeply spiritual group, and they would have recognized it completely different and been on a path this whole time trying to prove something spiritual.
Well, you look too. I mean, scientists and astronomers have already found hundreds, if not thousands, of Goldilocks zones or potential Goldilocks zones in other galaxies and solar systems. I mean, if what we think works here, should it not work in a different solar system, depending on the chemical compounds that make that up?
Yeah, and along with that, they'd have their own set of physics that are the boundaries of their planet, which I think that's so interesting, because that would mean that they're under a totally different set of rules than us potentially.
Absolutely.
You know, because I'm sure it's not exactly like Earth. You know, it'll be a different size. It'll be different somehow. There'll be differences, and so they'll
Gravity.
have a totally
Look, we
different
don't
set
know. I
of
mean,
physics.
there may be ponds of tomato juice up there somewhere that they are looking like water, you know, and you
Right.
know, it's toxic to us. Nobody really likes
Absolutely.
tomato juice except maybe filth.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I'm super excited for Artemis, our moon launch. I'm sure everyone else is. I've been watching the countdown and looking forward to it. I know it's a non-manned mission, but I think it expresses a lot, us moving forward. And I know you're not a huge NASA fan, but I am a NASA boy. And I
love
follow
rockets.
a lot of my friends are like NASA people. And
Here's
so
my thing, though, Tim. Should we really be excited about this?
depends on your position on space. Like, I just love every aspect of exploration. I just don't get into the politics. I just get into like the pure enthusiasm and the childhood wonder. Like, every time there's a launch, I'm just like eagerly nose pressed against the glass kind of guy.
See, I don't have an issue with that, Tim. I think that's wonderful. I mean, I love it too. I love watching as many rocket launches as I can. What bugs me about it is we shouldn't, 50 years after Apollo, we should be starting again. To me, I think that's one of the greatest gaffes that NASA had. Granted, you know, their budget and everything, you know, everything got expensive and everything.
Yeah.
Then they went to the shuttle program, not pushing any or venturing any further than 350 miles above Earth or whatever they're at.
I think a space station was important.
Me too.
And
too.
I think the fact that it was international was massive. And I think the fact that we're still engaging with Russia through NASA is fantastic.
Me
I
too.
mean, these little simple things, you know, I think are massive. That, like, at least on one level, we're still all equals in our discovery. Now, I know we're competitive on space, and I understand why, but it's not all combative. You know, a lot of it is still discovery. Now, we do need a space force. Obviously, there's issues with satellites, and there are independent people out there that are doing things we don't even know about. But, you know, and Space Force is there to regulate things, potentially, supposedly. So, you know, we'll see how things pan out, but I definitely think our venture back to the moon is fantastic. We obviously have to. China's there. Other countries are doing it. We need to have some say on what's taking place on our moon, and it is our moon. but I again think that these should be global ventures, not necessarily just one country. And that's why I appreciate NASA's stance on sharing space on most missions. They share seats on missions and things like that. So, yeah, there's a big collaboration that takes place, I think, in science and discovery, and I love that. That's a big part of what I personally do. So, yeah, I wish there was more transparency on how the money's been spent over the years, because I think obviously some has been siphoned. But yep, we should have been going back to the moon a long time ago. I definitely agree with that statement. You're absolutely right there.
The other idea about this, though, bud. I mean, if there is a truth to the secret space program, and that black TR-3Bs are ours, we're really dating ourselves with the dangers of rockets and rocket fuel technology.
Right. And if we were to believe that the Aurora existed as is, then that would be a no runway sort of straight shot to the moon that can get there within a day and back and these sorts of things. And so do these programs exist? Maybe. Maybe. Do we need a very public rocket like Artemis for big stuff? Yeah, it's a mega rocket. Let's not forget. So that's for big stuff, but you can send a couple guys potentially to the moon very rapidly, and there may be programs out there that have that ability within this country, but it's all just theoretical stuff. But again, you talk about the things that you see coming out now. It's 50-year-old patents. The patents were designed 50 years ago. So what do we have right now? Potentially we're far advanced. It's interesting stuff to think about, at least. And I know you and I talk about it offline all the time.
As we state to our audience, every time you see a commercial aircraft flying through the sky going to wherever its destination is, remember that somewhere in the United States or at some military base, there's something that flies 10 times faster.
Oh yeah. And computers also, the technology that we carry in our pockets, think about that for a moment, knowing that that's potentially 50-year-old technology. It's all really interesting. And I mean, I only just recently realized that my father had patents on his wall that he designed in the 80s, parts for a copier that didn't come out until the late 90s. So what that shows you is that the R&D for a lot of these things are done well in advance, and we know parts well in advance before you see the final project. So, if there was part of like an anti-gravity device that we could get to work, that probably exists, but have we maybe incorporated it into something that we could use? Maybe not yet. You do hear tales of UFO debris that they take out every 10 to 15 years and try to take a brand new look at because they weren't able to decipher it. And so they either have a shot at it and they're like, oh, we learned something new, or they're like, we still can't figure this out. So they put it back in the drawer for another 10 years.
Well, going to be interesting, bud.
For sure. I will sign off here, sir.
Absolutely.
And I will check back in with you soon. Thanks so much, audience, for listening to me drone on extra. But it's always fun. Dave's fun to chat with. So we're just chatting.
Absolutely. All right, buddy.
All right, man. Bring up the Africam, and I'll see you later. All right. Bye, audience. Bye, Dave.
Bye, Timmy. Tim Senor, everybody. All right. On that note, I'm going to call it an early night here, too. I'm just wasted tired. And I got a lot of stuff I need to do tomorrow because it's my day off, and I'm going to be moving more firewood over. So big thank you tonight to Dirt Road, Molly, Thomas, Pam, Chris, Gary, Obi, and Smithy for the super chats. Very much appreciate the love and support. Tomorrow night on the show, where are we here? September 1st. Sibylla Irwin. We're talking Bigfoot tomorrow night and cryptids and monsters. It's going to be fun. We'll do it all again tomorrow, everyone. You have a good night and take care. Much love to all of you. See you again.
Stay healthy, my friend.
You too.
You need bail money, give me a call.
Always, Dad. Take care.
You too.